Zoning Commission. It's 3:59. We'll start by item number 1, approval of the May 6th, 2014 agenda. Do I have a motion to place that on file?
Also move.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Same sign, no? All right, we have approval of the May 6th agenda. Item number 2 is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on April 1st, 2014. Do I have a motion to file this?
Also move.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 3, financial report. Staff?
This is Anderson with staff. You can see that this is a fiscal year-to-date report through the end of March, which puts us at 75% of the year for us. Going down through the different categories again, we should be at about 75%. We're actually a little bit under in some areas and over in others. And again, these areas are broken down by different categories. Some of them are a lot larger in percentages in terms of the amount of cash in them. Some are lower. The main ones to look at, we're a little bit over in city property management at 93%. That's mainly mowing of a lot of the properties that we've taken through blighted structures, so we're working to try to dispose of some of those for some infill housing. Otherwise, we're a little bit under as well, under expenses for salaries. That's because we have some grants that we're also operating under for brownfields, and for some other activities, so we're right on schedule overall.
Asked to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Financial report.
Financial report, please.
Also move for the financial report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Item 4 is oral presentations. Anybody in the here that wants to speak on anything that's not on the agenda, if you want to come to the mic, state your name and address. Seeing none, we'll move to agenda items. The time is 4:02, and a hearing is scheduled at this time. Request by the City of Waterloo to rezone the former Grand Hotel site at the southwest corner of Highway 63 and Jefferson Street from M1 Light Industrial District to CP Planned Commercial District for the redevelopment of the site for a multi-story residential and commercial development. At this time, we should receive and place on file a statement of verification signed by Patty McGee stating, I, Patty McGee, do hereby certify that a copy of the attached letter, drawings, aerial photos, and site plan was mailed to each individual on the attached list by regular mail on April 24th, 2014. We have a motion to receive and place this notice on file.
So moved?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. For those who wish to speak for or against this request, we would ask that you please come to the microphone and identify yourself by name and address. The members of the commission should also identify themselves before speaking to the microphones. Staff report.
This is Andera staff. This is a request to rezone 3.24 acres of land from M1 Light Industrial to CP Planned Commercial District. Would not appear that the rezone would have a negative impact upon the surrounding area or other surrounding land uses. Rezoning the property to allow for residential and commercial uses would appear to better fit the existing commercial development in the area. Future phases also involve commercial space to serve the tech works and Deere employees in the area. Proposed rezone request would not appear to have a negative impact upon traffic conditions in the area. The site is served by West Jefferson Street and Westfield Avenue, which are classified as collector streets. The site is also served by US Highway 63, which is classified as a principal arterial. There is 10-inch storm sewer located in Jefferson Street and a 12-inch storm sewer in Highway 63. There's also a 24-inch storm sewer located within Jefferson Street and a 21-inch sanitary sewer located within Highway 63. There's also a 10-inch water main in Highway 63 and 12-inch water main in West Jefferson Street. The CP Planned Commercial District is intended and designed to provide a means for the residential and compatible commercial developments of tracts of land on a unit basis, allowing greater flexibility and diversification of land uses and building locations than the conventional single lot method. It is the intent of the basic principles of good land use planning to be maintained and that sound zoning standards are set forth in the zoning ordinance concerning orderly growth and development, traffic patterns, and compatible design and use can be preserved. The ideals of the planned commercial district stem from the mixed-use commercial categorization on the future land use map within the comprehensive plan. Mixed-use commercial areas work to direct such developments into areas of transition from commercial to residential based on current developments. Commercial uses will be compatibly designed to blend in with the built or planned environment and shall incorporate the following elements into their design: building facade, landscaping, signage, screening, and site orientation and layout. Proposed rezone area consists of 3.24 acres. Currently, the land is zoned for light industrial uses, and staff feels that rezoning the land to CP Plan Commercial District to allow for the commercial and residential uses would better fit the recent commercial developments that have occurred in the area, most notably U.S. Bank and Dupaco Credit Union. The planned commercial district is a site plan specific district which requires new developments to go through a site plan amendment process. In this particular instance, the applicant is submitting a site plan along with building details as part of the rezoning request. Therefore, when the site develops, it will not require that the development have to go through a separate site plan review process, as long as the plan does not deviate greatly as what was approved as a part of the rezoning request. Currently, the city has an interested developer who wants to develop the land for residential and commercial uses. The intent of the proposed plan is to construct a new 67-unit, 4-story multifamily use building, which would be near the intersection of West Jefferson Street and Westfield Avenue. The building facade is a mix of stone, brick, and similar materials for an urban-type residential structure. A side elevation shows balconies off the units on floors 2 through 4, and larger doors leading to those balconies. There are also larger windows shown on the units. A large entryway to the structure is shown at the intersection of West Jefferson Street and Westfield Avenue. From reviewing the submitted site plan, it would appear that the outside parking would be 90-degree parking with two-way traffic in the aisles. Underground, there will be 60 parking stalls, and to the south of the building, there will be 133 outdoor parking stalls. In all, there will be a total of 193 parking stalls on the site to accommodate the 134 stalls needed for the residential use, as the zoning ordinance requires that there be 2 parking stalls per dwelling unit, and that the remaining 59 parking stalls will be tied to the commercial uses as shown in Phase 2 of the submitted site plan. The nearby commercial development in Phase 2, the development is shown having 2 stories with outdoor seating areas. The approved site plan and subsequent documents for plating and construction will further contain cross easements for the use of outside parking area to promote and allow mixed parking for the multiple phases of the development. The site will contain the potential for a 3rd phase as well as on land owned by the Iowa Department of Transportation that the city is currently trying to acquire. According to the downtown master plan, this particular area is located within a new economy district. The new economy district is envisioned as an urban high-tech campus aimed at attracting and incubating new economy businesses with a focus on the bioagriculture and advanced manufacturing. Cedar Valley Tech has already been established in this district, and rezoning the land in question will allow for further commercial and residential development to occur and contribute to the new economy district. Therefore, staff recommends that the request to rezone from M1 Light Industrial District to CP Planned Commercial District be approved for the following reasons. The site in question would appear to provide sufficient space to meet all required regulations, including setbacks, drainage, landscaping, screening, etc. It would appear that rezoning the land to CP Planned Commercial District would have a positive impact upon the surrounding area, as rezoning of the land as such would fit the future plans for this area, as well as bringing additional development customers and nearby businesses and amenities. It would appear that rezoning the land to CP Planned Commercial District would not have a negative impact on vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions in the area, and subject to the condition that the final site plan meet all city codes, regulations, etc., including but not limited to parking, landscaping, drainage, etc. Any questions for staff?
Mrs. Tackett, I have a question.
Sure.
Do you know what kind of complex this is? Is it for apartments? Is it senior housing? Do we know what?
I believe it's supposed to be for market rate housing.
Okay.
This is Hall. Do we know, are the parking stalls, are they all, is there any controlled parking, I guess, other than the underground? Or is it just street access, no gates?
As far-
Do we know the plan?
As far as I know, it's just street access for the parking,
Okay.
not a gated community at this time.
So on hockey nights,
Yep. Well, especially if the city does look at tacking on parking fees. I know there's been that conversation, so I'm just curious.
If there's anyone from the audience that wants to speak up for or against this, please come to the mic, state your name and address. Seeing none, we can close the hearing.
Move for approval to close the hearing. Okay, also move to close the public hearing. This is Mike Young.
Frank can second it.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Yep.
Yep, close the hearing.
So, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, the hearing's closed.
Okay. And just for discussion, I guess to move it along, I would make a motion to approve the request to rezone, subject to the condition that the final site plan meets all applicable city codes, regulations, et cetera, including but not limited to parking, landscaping, drainage, et cetera.
Second.
So we have a motion to approve the rezone request.
Just discussion.
No discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is this roll call vote?
No, we can do it that way.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next, we have the time is 4:11. We have a request by Roof Development to rezone .41 acres from C2 Commercial District to C3 Central Business District to allow for the construction of 8 new residential units generally located at the northwest corner of East 3rd Street and Lafayette Street. At this time, we should receive and place on file a statement of verification signed by Patty McGee stating, "I, Patty McGee, do hereby certify that a copy of the attached letter, aerial photos, and site plan was mailed to each individual on the attached list by regular mail on April 24th, 2014. We have a motion to receive and place this notice on file.
This is Mike Young, also move.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. For those of you who wish to speak for or against this request, we would ask that you please come to staff report.
Okay, this is Western with staff. The proposed development would not have a negative impact on the area and will in fact be a positive impact for an area that has not seen significant development in many years. The property is located at the northwest corner of East 3rd Street and Lafayette Street, of which Lafayette Street is classified as a collector and East 3rd Street is classified as a local street. There's a sidewalk along both streets. The proposed rezone and construction of the condominiums on the site in question would not appear to have a negative impact on pedestrian or vehicular traffic in the area. The proposed rezone area is currently zoned C2 Commercial District and has been zoned as such since the adoption of the zoning ordinance. The area in question has seen very little new development. The area in question has a mix of uses which include the Waterloo Waterworks to the south, Zone C2 Commercial, St. John's Church to the north, Zone C2 Commercial, the YWCA and Elks Club to the east, Zone C3 Commercial, and residential uses to the west, Zone C2. It would appear that there would not be a negative impact on the surrounding area. The area to be rezoned is in the Zone X protected by a levee, which is not in a special flood hazard area as established by the Federal Emergency Management Association. As far as the utilities, there is a 12-inch water main in Lafayette Street that lays 25 feet south of the north line of Lafayette Street. There is also a 10-inch water main in East 3rd Street that lays 26.5 feet east of the west line of East 3rd Street.
The Waterloo Waterworks also has a fiber optic line along East 3rd Street on the west side of the street. The future land use map designates this area as mixed commercial, medium to high-density residential and professional offices. Staff feels that the rezoning and construction of 8 condominium units would appear to be in conformance with the future land use map and comprehensive plan. The proposed rezone would comprise of .41 acres owned by the applicant. The site was owned by the City of Waterloo and was being used as a parking lot. It was determined that the site is underutilized and that a development of this type that's being proposed would be an excellent fit for the area. The site plan shows a setback of 10 feet along Lafayette Street, the westerly property line, and along the rear of the property. A 5-foot setback is being proposed along East 3rd Street. Site plan submitted by the applicant shows 8 two-story units with a main base square footage of 720 square feet, with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, main floor laundry, full basements, as well as 2 stall garages. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property to C3 Commercial District, which allows new construction to be built with a 0-foot setback from all property lines. The current zoning of the C2 would require a 20-foot front yard setback, a 35 rear yard setback, and a 5-foot side yard setback, which would have made this project impossible to be built as designed. City code requires that a project that disturbs 5,000 square feet or more will be required to have a stormwater retention plan submitted to the engineering department prior to a permit being issued. The applicant has agreed to submit such plans when and if the rezone request is approved. Therefore, staff recommends the request to rezone approximately .41 acres from C2 Commercial District to C3 Commercial District for the purpose of constructing 8 brownstone-style condominiums at the corner of East 3rd Street and Lafayette Street be approved for the following reasons. The request is in conformance with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map as the request meets the density requirements. The request is compatible to existing developments based on the layout and density numbers as shown. The area can be served by the extension of existing utilities. This project would add quality residential living opportunities that are needed and desired in the downtown area, and subject to the following conditions: that the final site plan meet all requirements, including but not limited to drainage, landscaping, screening, hard service, vehicle use areas, etc. Are there any questions for staff?
This is Hall. So I had someone reach out to me with a brief concern. I just wanted to get a little bit of clarification, I guess. This request has 8 brownstones, 8 units, and from my understanding, what was agreed, what council supported about a month and a half ago was 6. Can you touch on that?
Actually, I noted that as well. I know the applicant's here, and maybe you can explain why we've gone to 8.
Okay.
Members of the board, my name is John Ruff. We have our business at 1507 Commercial Street, and we are proposing to build traditional brownstone brick-faced units in this area, in keeping with the rest of the buildings that are in the surrounding area. We asked for 6 originally, but that was, I guess, in the application, we wanted to be able to put them on 3rd Street. There is enough room around the corner to go with 2 facing Lafayette. There's interest in selling that old threeplex, which could be fixed up and improve that part of the neighborhood as well. So we didn't want to put anything on Lafayette until we were able to get 6 established on 3rd Street. These units will be 18 feet wide, 9-foot ceilings, 40 feet long, and full basements, and actually 3.5 baths possible. So Any questions?
Sorry, I've got one more question. What will the square footage of the lots still, will they still be at 1,000 feet?
There'll
the
be,
original agreement?
there'll be 6 buildings all in a row, brick buildings, and the square footage of those will be 720.
Of the
And then there'll
buildings?
be a patio and then a double garage.
Okay. And that will be the same for the
For all of
other 2 units in the back? under-
Exactly.
Okay, okay.
Exactly.
Single story?
2-story.
Two-story, so 700 total square foot?
720 on the first floor, 720 on the second.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience would like to speak for or against this rezone request? Seeing none, I'd like to have a request to close the public hearing.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Discussion?
This is Mike Young, just to move it along, I'll make a motion that we approve the request to rezone, subject to the condition that the final site plan meet all requirements, including but not limited to drainage, landscaping, screening, hard surface vehicle use areas, etc.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the rezone with the conditions set by staff. All those in favor to approve, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next on the agenda is a hearing. Time is 4:21. Request by Corstang Enterprises LLC for a site plan amendment to the BP Business Park District to allow for the construction of a new 10,800 square foot commercial building located at the northeast corner of Cyclone Drive and Titan Trail. At this time, we should receive and place on file a statement of verification signed by Patty McGee, stating, "I, Patty McGee, do hereby certify that a copy of the attached letter, aerial photographs, drawings, and site plan was mailed to each individual on the attached list by regular mail on April 24th, 2014. We have a motion to receive and place this notice on file.
Also move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Those who wish to speak for or against this request, we would ask that you please come to the microphone and identify yourself by name and address. Staff report first.
This is Graham with staff. The applicant is proposing the site plan amendment to the BP Business Park District. Would allow for the construction of a new 10,800 square foot commercial building. The business would relocate to this property from the adjacent property to the south. The request does not appear to have a negative impact on the neighborhood, as this area is primarily commercial in nature and is zoned for a business park. The site plan provided does show a new driveway access from Titan Trail. Titan Trail connects to West Ridgeway Avenue to the north and to US Highway 63 to the east, so there would not appear to be any negative impacts on traffic, as those roads would appear to be able to handle the small amount of added traffic that this request may generate. There are no sidewalks in the area. However, the deed of dedication for the plat does indicate that sidewalks must be installed along all street frontages. The future land use map does designate this site as business park. This request would appear to be in conformance with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. The property was platted back in 2008, of which 2 lots were created, the 3-acre lot in question, as well as the 1.5-acre lot to the south, where the applicant's existing business is located. The applicant has indicated that the existing structure they're in is too large for their needs. That building is 15,000 square feet. So they're proposing to construct this building across the street at a smaller square footage of 10,800 square feet. They submitted a new site plan for the property, which shows the building. It's 120 by 90 feet, as well as an access to the property from Titan Trail. The building would be situated near the southeast corner of the property, with parking being shown to the west and northwest of the building. The building would be constructed with a mix of EIFS, block, glass, and metal. The applicant has indicated that the building may look similar to the Riley's Floors building, which is constructed along Marnie Avenue on the other side of Highway 63. The site plan amendment request would appear compatible to the area, as there have been a number of similar-sized commercial buildings constructed within this area in the past 5 to 10 years. This request would also help to develop the area by utilizing an existing vacant piece of land that's ready to be built on, and that can be served by existing utilities. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the site plan amendment to the BP Business Park District, as the request would not appear to have a negative impact on the surrounding area and would appear to be a good infill development on an existing parcel of land that is zoned appropriately for the proposed use. And the property is designated as business park on the future land use map, and this request would be a compatible use with the surrounding area and subject to the following conditions. One, that the site plan meets all applicable city codes, regulations, et cetera, including but not limited to parking, drainage, landscaping, et cetera. And also, a second condition, that sidewalks be constructed along all street frontages as required by the deed of dedication for this subdivision. Any questions for staff?
This is tackle the question, just so I have my bearings straight. The building that they're vacating, is that the one that on our next item, is that where Condero Church would like to go
Yes.
into? And then this is where they would like to move?
Correct.
Just so they're sort of related?
Sort of related,
Okay.
yes. Mhm.
With that being said, I am involved with both these transactions, so I'll be abstaining from these items 3 and 4, as well as the special permit on 1. Is there anyone from the staff that or excuse me, from the audience that would like to speak for or against the site plan amendment? Seeing none, I would like a request to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, hearing is closed. Discussion? Or motion?
I would move to approve the request for the site plan amendment along with the normal conditions as listed.
We have a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for the site plan amendment with city's staff's recommendation for item number 1 as well as item 2 for sidewalks. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a site plan amendment. The time is 4:27, and the hearing is scheduled at this time. This is a request by Condeo Church for a site plan amendment to the BP Business Park District to allow for the establishment of a new church facility and for the construction of a new parking lot for the church facility located at 3211 Titan Trail. At this time, we should receive and place on file a statement of verification signed by Patty McGee stating, "I, Patty McGee, do hereby certify that a copy of the attached letter, aerial photos, drawing, and site plan was mailed to each individual on the attached list by regular mail on April 24, 2014. We have a motion to receive and place this notice on file.
So moved?
Second?
It's been moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. For those of you who wish to speak for or against the request, we ask that you please come to the microphone and identify yourself by name and address. The members of the commission should also identify themselves before speaking to the microphones. Staff report.
This is Graham with staff. If you don't mind, I'll also cover the next item, the next request. It's a special permit for the same applicant, so I'll go in, there's a few minor details on the other staff report, but I'll cover them both in one, if that's okay. So this request is for a site plan amendment to the BP Business Park District. It's in order to establish a new church facility and to construct a new parking lot in association with the church. The church would utilize the existing access to the property, which is off of Titan Trail. Again, Titan Trail connects to West Ridgeway Avenue and Highway 63 to the east. There are no sidewalks in this area, however, the deed of dedication for the plat indicates that sidewalks must be installed along all street frontages. The building was constructed in 2008, and sidewalks have not been constructed along those street frontages as of yet, and this would also still need to be done. An updated drainage plan would be required per the engineering department, since they are planning to construct a new parking lot with this project. The applicant is proposing to purchase the building at 3211 Titan Trail in order to establish the church facility at this location. They would also be purchasing 2 additional acres to the south and would construct a new parking lot for the church patrons. They are also asking for the special permit in order to establish the facility at this location. In addition to the special permit, the site plan amendment is also required because of the BP Business Park District, which is site plan and use specific. Although no changes are being proposed to the existing building itself, the applicant is proposing to purchase those additional 2 acres for parking lot expansion. The parking lot that is associated with the existing building contains 32 parking spaces, and they are proposing to construct an additional parking lot to the south that would contain 255 additional parking spaces for a total of 287 parking spaces. The parking requirements for a church call for 1 parking stall for each 4 persons of maximum occupancy of the sanctuary, auditorium, or main hall. The applicants have provided an interior site plan which shows the auditorium having a maximum occupancy of 670 persons. Therefore, the parking requirement would be 168 parking stalls, which would appear to be met. In addition to the site plan amendment request for the parking lot expansion and the special permit request, they're also asking for a 3-year temporary variance to the hard surface provision of the zoning ordinance. The ordinance does state that a vehicular use area be surfaced with either concrete or asphalt. The applicants have indicated they would like to use another surface such as chip seal, as they would only be using the parking area on Sunday mornings during church services, and the church location is intended to be there for a temporary time until they can find a more permanent location. It would appear that the parking lot expansion would fit the needs of the proposed use. The use would appear to generate a fairly large amount of traffic, as evidenced by the number of parking stalls they'll be providing. This location would appear to be able to better serve the additional traffic that the use may generate based on its location to Highway 63, which is classified as a principal arterial, and West Ridgeway Avenue, which is classified as a minor arterial. Therefore, staff is recommending this BP site plan amendment be approved, as the request would not appear to have a negative impact on the surrounding area and would appear to be needed based on the required amount of parking for the proposed use. And the use would be for a temporary time frame, as the applicants hope to find a permanent location in the next several years, and subject to the following conditions: 1, that the site plan meets all applicable city codes, regulations, including but not limited to parking, drainage, landscaping, etc., and 2, that the sidewalks be constructed along all street frontages as required by the deed of dedication for this subdivision. And I'll hop over to the other staff report. There's just a couple minor things that weren't on this staff report. Okay, so I already talked about the temporary variance that they are requesting as well. Although this location is primarily a commercial area, a church can be located within any zoning district upon approval of the special permit. In this case, the building will be vacated, as the existing tenant is going to construct that new building across the street. Also, the use would appear to generate a fairly large amount of traffic, as evidenced by the parking stalls that they're proposing to provide. This location would appear to be able to better serve the additional traffic that the use may generate based on its location, which, however, staff does have some concern with the establishment of religious facilities within industrial park areas, as they can sometimes be incompatible to intended uses in an industrial park. Staff is, however, recommending approval of the special permit as well, for the same reasons as the site plan amendment. The request would not appear to have a negative impact on the surrounding area. And the use would be for a temporary time frame, and then subject to the same conditions as the site plan amendment, that it meets all applicable city codes, and that the sidewalks be constructed along all street frontages per the deed of dedication. Any questions for staff?
This is Tackett. I have just a couple. What is chip seal?
Thank you for asking that.
You have a better explanation? I mean, it's better than gravel, and it's not quite as smooth as asphalt. I mean, maybe Eric, the city engineer, might be able to explain that a little better than I can.
Is it like a spray? I know sometimes in rural areas they will spray over gravel. Is it similar to that to keep the dirt impacted, or?
Eric Thorson, city engineer. Usually a seal coat is where they, excuse me, lay down a hot layer of asphalt, very thin, it's sprayed down, and then they place chips on top of that, and they're quite small. They're just really small chips, and they roll those in. Sometimes I know when the city does seal coating, we come back and also then spray another layer of asphalt on the top to kind of make it hold together better, and also helps control the dust a little better. It's definitely not considered a hard surface, but does help control dust a little bit, so.
Any other questions for staff, or is there anyone from the audience that'd like to speak for or against this site plan amendment or special permit?
Stan Hayek, 1221 Ashworth Drive in Cedar Falls. And so I'm on staff with the church as the college pastor. The church has started in September of this past year, September 8th. And so we're from Cornerstone Church in Ames, Iowa, where we have a vibrant college ministry and a church there. And so we came here, we started with just a few people, and now we're averaging just over 300 on the weekends. We've got a college ministry, which I pastor at UNI, that's got 150 on average every week. And so we've been renting some spaces to facilitate us, and this move would be a great temporary solution, a 5 to 7 year solution, instead of renting high dollar spaces to get us in a space before we build with brick and mortar, and so to serve that purpose. And so that would be our intentions with the space. We'd be happy to comply with any of those requests made by the city. So.
Any questions for the applicant?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming forward.
Yeah. Anyone else in the audience like to speak for or against this? Seeing none, I'd like to make a request to close the public hearing.
So moved. This is Mike Young.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion, or hearing is now closed. Any discussion items or discussion or motion?
This is Rankin. Is the staff's recommendation for approval, is that with the chip seal parking lot, or?
That variance request will be heard by the Board of Adjustment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just mentioning it in the staff report, but that'll be a variance to the hard surfacing requirement, which the Board of Adjustment
Okay.
would view.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Tackett, I've come from cities where churches have purchased former grocery stores in industrial parks, and they have worked very well. I've never heard of any problem with incompatibility. And my second is, if I understand, there is nothing currently there that would be questioned where we have codes where certain businesses can't be near a protected area, but there's nothing in there currently, correct? So there wouldn't be a conflict.
Correct.
From a practical standpoint, the sidewalk issue, apparently that was supposed to be done some time ago and wasn't done, and now it's part of the conditions of this approval. Is there some method or form of kind of follow-up to make sure that does get done?
This is Anderson with staff. Normally, the building department would look at that as part of issuing the certificate of occupancy. I'm not sure what happened with this one, if they were trying to get occupancy, in late fall or early spring, and so it was given, and then thinking that the sidewalk would be followed up on, and it wasn't. So we'll definitely try to tie that back with that to make sure it's done properly.
Mrs. Tackett, because that wasn't done, is there any way, or I don't know if it's even possible, if the previous owner who's selling it that should have put in the sidewalk, could they maybe work with the new occupants, since it seems like the burden now falls on them when it should have fallen on the previous owner?
Anderson, again, correct, I mean, I guess that could have been a negotiating point for them in the purchase of this, if perhaps that was done.
And this is just a procedural this is Mike Young probably for Noel. Is it, because these are heard together, is it best to make one motion here or two separate motions?
I think you can do it either way, as long as, there's not a lot of concern with one motion versus the other. Obviously, like Shane said, they're pretty similar in all the actions you're taking. One goes to council, one will go to the Board of Adjustment, but if everyone's comfortable, we can take it all as one motion.
Matt, I'll put that.
That's fine.
If there's no further discussion, then I would make a motion to approve the request for the site plan amendment, subject to the conditions as noted, and also approval of the special permit, again, subject to the conditions as noted.
Second?
We have a motion to approve the site plan amendment and the special permit. Roll call vote, or are we going to? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
With one abstention.
You abstain.
I abstain. Next, we have a special permit request by the City of Waterloo Community School District for a special permit to allow for a new bus barn and maintenance facility and for the expansion of the existing Met Transit property to include a new transfer station located at 1515, 1601, and 1624 Blackhawk Street.
If it is okay with commission, I will actually talk about the following. Also, the following vacate of the alley within the Blackhawk Street, or within the current request, special permit request. Current special permit request, the applicant is the Waterloo Community School District, and there's requesting a special permit for the development of the bus barn and maintenance facility for the Waterloo Community School District, and also development of the Met Transfer Station, all located within or between West 12th Street and West 15th Street along Blackhawk Street. It would appear the request would not have a negative impact on the area, and the area is primarily used for industrial purposes with a few residents in the area. The city fuel station is located adjacent to the proposed Met Transfer Station to the northwest. The site in question is zoned M1 Light Industrial District and has been since the adoption of the ordinance 3475 on March 9th of 1987. The property in question, along with the surrounding properties, were developed primarily in the 1960s and 70s, and the area is made up of residential and industrial uses. The property in question is within the Zone X protected by levee floodplain, and for utilities in West 3rd Street, there is a 48-inch storm sewer line and a 36-inch sanitary sewer line. The Blackhawk Street contains two 4-inch drain tiles between West 13th and West 14th Street, along with an 8-inch sanitary sewer line and a 10-inch sewer line between West 14th and West 15th Street. West 15th Street contains a 48-inch storm sewer and 8-inch sanitary sewer line. An 80-foot permanent sanitary sewer and storm sewer easement would be retained on West 13th Street between Blackhawk Street and the Cedar River. The proposed site is located adjacent to the City of Waterloo fuel station. Staff believes that this location would be beneficial not only for the Waterloo Community School District, but also to the City of Waterloo and the Metropolitan Transit Authority. The proposed location will bring similar entities together and improve the area by bringing in new development. The site would also have potential to bring in additional employment to downtown area, in turn assisting with support and development in businesses downtown. The Waterloo Community Schools bus barn and maintenance facility and the Waterloo Metropolitan Transit Authority transfer station could potentially assist each other with bus parts, repairs, washes, etc. The central location of the bus barn would also be more economical and more favorable for taxpayers through the school budget, potentially saving on gas and travel time for buses. The City of Waterloo and Waterloo Community School District have an agreement to exchange the property in question and the current location of the bus barn on Orange Road by the former Orange School location, and the Waterloo Community School District and the City of Waterloo have a history of many partnerships in the past and present, including working together to provide residential infill in public spaces where no longer necessary. For example, Williston Field and Baltimore Field. They have worked together on many projects and provide land use patterns for future growth throughout the city and wish to continue this partnership. The Waterloo Community School District is also acquiring the property to the south of Blackhawk Street, known as 1624 Blackhawk Street, for additional parking and office maintenance building. An 80-foot sanitary sewer and storm sewer easement will be retained along West 13th Street. Therefore, staff is recommending that the request for special permit allow the development of the bus barn maintenance facility for the Waterloo Community School District and also for the development of a transfer station for the Waterloo Metropolitan Transit Authority be approved for the following reasons. The proposed improvements would not appear to have a negative impact on the surrounding area and it is in conformance with the comprehensive land use map. The request would be beneficial for not only the Waterloo Community School District, but also for Waterloo Metropolitan Transit Authority and the City of Waterloo. Subject to the following condition, that the final site plan meets all applicable city codes, regulations, etc., including but not limited to parking, landscaping, drainage, etc. And on to the vacate request. The City of Waterloo is actually requesting the vacate to the platted 20-foot alley located between West 14th Street and West 15th Street. No easements would be needed to be maintained within the alley as there are no utilities, sewer, or water lines within the alley in question. The request to vacate the platted 20-foot alley located between West 14th Street and West 15th Street. The applicants are requesting the vacate to allow development of a new bus barn for the Waterloo Community School District, and staff would note that the alley is currently used along with the Public Works facility, and the City of Waterloo currently owns all the properties adjacent to the alley. The City of Waterloo plans to exchange the property with the Waterloo Community School District pending approval of various zoning requests for development of the new bus barn for the school district. No easements would need to be maintained within the vacation of the alley. Therefore, staff recommends that the request to vacate the 20-foot platted alley generally located between West 14th Street and West 15th Street, north of Blackhawk Street, be approved for the following reasons. The site in question would not appear to have a negative impact on the neighborhood and traffic conditions. The alley is currently used along with Public Works facilities and is in conformance with the future land use map designated as this area as mixed commercial, and there are no utilities located within the area requested to be vacated. Any questions for staff?
Adrian, do you also want to cover F1?
Yeah, I can do that.
While you're all looking at the same map, it's related to the item as well.
Absolutely. There's also the request by the Waterloo Community School District to allow parking in the city right-of-way along 15th Street between Blackhawk Street and the Cedar River. The proposed request could have a negative impact on the traffic area. Allowing parking on city-owned right-of-way would create a situation where cars are forced to back out onto the roadway. The proposed location of parking on city-owned right-of-way would take place on dead-end street and would appear to be a low-traffic street without much through traffic. There is a sanitary sewer and storm sewer lines that run through the center of 15th Street and extends through the center of Blackhawk Street, but are not located within the area proposed on-street parking. The city ordinance 4602 notes that the parking is not permitted in city right-of-way between curbs and sidewalks on the property line. The code states that businesses wishing to park in the right-of-way must obtain approval from city council after recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission. Right-of-way parking would be taking place along the northwest side of West 15th Street to allow parking for staff of the bus barn. Staff would note that there is potential negative impact to the traffic conditions in the area. Allowing parking on city-owned right-of-way would cause vehicles to back out onto the street, causing low visibility, temporary blockage of the street. Staff would note that a portion of West 15th Street and the vehicles would be backing into the dead-end street portion of the street and appears to be a low-traffic street. A majority of the traffic in the area travels on Blackhawk Street. Staff would note that it appears other surrounding businesses utilize the city right-of-way for parking in the area, including the property to the northwest and southeast along Blackhawk Street. Staff would note that there's approximately 25 feet of right-of-way between the property line and 15th Street. Site plans show 35 parking stalls along West 15th Street, and the site plan shows additional parking south of Blackhawk Street on property the school district would be acquiring. but the site does not allow sufficient amount of parking stalls for the employees for the school district. Therefore, staff recommends that the request to appeal the city code requirement prohibiting vehicles from parking in the city-owned right-of-way located along 15th Street between Blackhawk Street and Cedar River be approved for the following reasons. The street in question is a dead-end street with low traffic conditions. Allowing parking on the city-owned right-of-way would appear to encourage infill development in the area due to businesses not being able to meet parking requirements in small lots in the area. And a portion of the right-of-way requested for parking would allow sufficient space for cars to park without overhanging into 15th Street, West 15th Street. Any questions?
Mrs. Tackett, I have one question. It's, I don't know if it's related or not, but it's in our packet, and I don't know if, Mike, if you can answer it, or it's, when we're listing the partnership between the City of Waterloo and the Waterloo Community Schools, listed the different projects. Number 4, it says, pilot software to increase student tracking and safety. Is that within the building itself? Is that something completely different, or could you explain kind of what they're thinking about?
Yes, this is Mike Young. It was a project, a pilot project that we put in place, and school board member Lyle Schmidt spent a lot of time on it as well, and we still have some tweaks to do to perfect it. But the thought is, most kids wear lanyards now with that are essentially ID cards with a magnetic stripe. And the thought is to get on the buses where the kids would basically clock in and clock out. So as a parent, you could, ideally, it would be as a parent, you could see where your child is on a bus for safety reasons as well, and just to make sure you know where your kids are. But the second thing it could do would be a much more efficient model as well, both in the mornings, but especially in the afternoon, that the information, when you found out which kids were on the bus, that would automatically be inputted. So the route that the bus was driving would change, and you wouldn't have to drive all the mileage to go to a house, for example, where you didn't have a student on the bus. This is in the afternoon. You weren't going to drop them off. But sometimes now, as it stands, you don't know which kids are on the bus, so you'll go to every stop. And so it would be much more efficient, less mileage, less fuel cost, less time. Now, the question on that, though, is you're coming home when you have little kids. There are many, many issues. I could talk for a while about it. But if you don't want to show up at a house too early, especially with a young, first grader or kindergartner, so the thought is you could tell parents through text messages or something else that the bus was arriving early. So that was that cost savings measure that went into it. Getting to this, for everybody in the audience perspective, and Steve as well, I'll abstain from voting on this. I'm on the school board, I'm on the Planning and Zoning Board because I'm on the school board. So I'll abstain from voting on these 3 matters. I'm actually going to abstain from voting on the next one because in my real job, I'm a lawyer, and so the next one, C2, request to vacate, I'll actually go and sit down in the audience. But just to provide some background on this from the school district perspective, I talked a little bit about it last time we had the discussion. Then was more on the, I think on the animal shelter in that, but it's in the same area. What Lynn Taggett alluded to was cost savings and finding efficiencies. And so one of the things with the school, with New Orange Elementary being built and the old Orange was there, for some reason, I still don't know why, but the bus barn has been an Orange Elementary for a long, long time. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because if you look at the Waterloo School District, it's at essentially almost about as far south as you can go. So it's not very efficient, especially when you have routes that go north, past the airport. So the cost savings that you see in there are about $200,000 a year to change the bus garage. In that, those cost savings come from just the fact that it'll be much more centrally located. So bus routes going north especially, it'll be less fuel, less diesel fuel, and then just less time, and much more efficient. So the issue that went in, though, the way everything kind of worked now was a lot of things came together. The new Orange being built, and then thinking about what do we do with the old Orange building. But primarily it's probably the city relocating the Public Works, or Street Department and Public Works, that this area was becoming open. So if you look at a map, again, this is much more centrally located. And then the fact that Met is still there, it just, everything kind of seemed to come together. It's generally, I think I talked about it last month as well, there is some residential in this neighborhood, so you couldn't say it's entirely industrial, but by the same token, you couldn't say it's entirely residential either. So it seemed to be probably the best fit that you could find that was centrally located. What you'll see in your board packet, in the existing building that's used as essentially the garage now for Public Works, is it 30?
Yes.
30 parking spaces. Dan Channer from Structure Architecture is here and can answer questions as well, but that'll allow buses to be parked indoors, because now I think I think 3 buses can be parked indoors out of roughly 80, 85 buses, yeah. So that, especially in the winter, like we had a winter this year where we had a couple days where school was canceled just because the buses couldn't operate because the diesel fuel gelled. So more buses could be parked indoors. But in looking at this, you'll see that's right along the levee, along the river, is the city property. And that worked very well, but still Met is going to operate there, and they need space. And so you've got, and again, 75 to probably 85 buses that are in the fleet. And so
We have spaces for 99.
99, okay, which may be a little bit more than what we have now. But as I first thought about it, you think, well, if we can find space for those 85 or 99 buses, you're set. But the other thing that goes into it is the employee parking. The bus drivers they'll drive their cars in, they need a place to park. And so that's when it started to look into the property that's just to the southwest in the, I'm trying to think of the name of the business that's existing.
Progressive Tool.
Progressive Tool, okay. So the school district is looking to purchase that, and that was actually approved at one of the school district board meetings. And that's buying it from a private owner. But that's what you see on here, so there'll be additional employee parking. But then also what it'll do is allow, some of the buildings that you see on the map there will be torn down. But the maintenance bay and the transportation and tech office will remain from the existing buildings. And those will allow, right now, it's essentially just a modular, like a trailer, that's the office at the bus garage. So there's not really a place to hold meetings of bus drivers or, yeah, it really any conference room or area, so it will allow for that. Again, I'll abstain from voting on this. I asked Dan Channer if he could come, because he's really worked on all the design of it and can answer questions as well. But if there's anything else, please let me know, or anybody else on staff.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against this project? Is there a motion?
Mrs. Tackett, if we make a motion, do we need 3 separate motions? Do we bundle them into 2 and then 1, or 3, or how would you like to do this?
I really think it's up to the commission. Again, if there's no concerns on any of them, you could make a motion to approve all 3 items. It would be B2, C1, and F1. Or if you want to take them separately because you have concern for one or the other, you can do that as well.
I'd like to separate the parking in the right-of-way
Okay.
item.
I'd like to make a motion then that we approve, is it B2, C2?
B2 and C1.
B2 and C1, including the staff recommendations, the proposed improvements, do not appear to have a negative impact, and that the final site plan meets all applicable city codes, regulations, et cetera, and all conditions stated therefore by the planning department.
Second. So we have a motion to approve the special permit and the vacate request with the staff's recommendations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And Young abstains.
Abstain.
Those 2 pass, and we'll move on to is there a motion for the appeal? Or Gary, did you have any comments regarding that?
I just felt it was a little different than the other 2, and maybe if someone wanted to discuss it, could. You know, that, I think that item is coming up on another agenda item, and we discussed there too, and obviously sets a precedence, one for the other. So if anybody has any comments on it, you have the opportunity to do that.
Are these tied perpetually? Are they forever in essence, if this property sold to another user, is somebody going to be able to park in the right of way? Or
Yes, yeah. Yes, it's not by user. Once it's approved, it's permanent unless changed back by the council.
is there also, some history of doing these or versus not doing them, or they're case by case? Is there anything else you can kind of elaborate on?
Sure. This is Anderson with staff. We've been looking at these on a case-by-case basis, basically looking at different criteria where they're requested. A lot of them are on infill development sites, such as this. We've been looking for criteria such as low-traffic streets. I know we approved one for the Kugler infill site, which again was basically a two-block area, the dead end at the north and at the south. Again, this is a dead-end one. We've been looking at areas that have an excessive amount of right-of-way. Standard right-of-way in the city is about 60 feet. I think this one's 80. The Kugler one was 80, I think, as well. So again, and we've also been looking at the presence of utilities in the area, underneath the area where they're going to be parking on the right-of-way. So we've really looked at this on a case-by-case basis to look and see where it makes sense. We don't want any traffic concerns from heavy traffic areas on there, but we'd like to be able to help some of these infill development sites be redeveloped.
Mrs. Tackett, I don't know if this is possible. I'm trying to think if there's a doable way. Is an encroachment a possibility, or is that not applicable in this case? I mean, something to consider in the future, or?
We could, this seemed to be an easier solution for the ones that we thought, especially where there's not utilities underneath, to be a permanent location.
This is Schrader with staff, and also with encroachment agreements, there's generally been some sort of actual structure. I suppose you could call the parking lot a structure. Generally, because parking within the right-of-way is a little bit different, and it's kind of spelled out differently in the code, providing that it's not allowed, but there's provision in there for the process, commission, council, for how it can be approved. It was kind of looked at it a little bit different. The other thing I wanted to mention is the applicant for the other appeal for parking within the right-of-way, the Surface Solutions request on Paper Mill and LaPorte Road, has pulled their request for this month. They're kind of finalizing some changes that I think will be a little bit more acceptable to the city, so they hope to be back next month with that request. But just since I heard it kind of reference that, comparing the two, but that one is pulled from this month's agenda. We forgot to mention that at the beginning of the meeting.
This is Hall. What's the surface of the proposed parking at this location?
There are multiple surfaces. There is the existing street department building would end up with some concrete and some existing gravel rock.
Okay.
Across the street where we would be demolishing. Okay, thank you. The intent is to tear down this portion of that existing building, and so that area would be hard surfaced, as in code it's required, where we take down any structure and you come back with parking, that has to be hard surfaced. This is a gravel rock lot, which would remain as existing, as does this right here. There is some concrete here, some rock, and rock in that area. So it's a combination thereof.
What about
In the right-of-way?
This right here, if I remember right, Eric, that's a grass area. I've never seen it actually without snow on it. So
do you know what they're proposing?
I would assume that we would like to use the same surface as what the street itself is, which appears to be rock to me, but it may be asphalt.
Do you control the properties to the south as well? I mean, is that part of the bigger scope of, or what, or can you identify what those are?
I believe this one is Hawkeye Sheet Metal, and I am not sure what this one is.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
And just from the school district perspective that you'll see on there, you'll see in the packet that it's a pretty, even though it looks like a pretty big area, you'll see all that space is utilized, especially parking buses, I believe, in the tow, is that what it's called, with the levee?
Yes, we
That you
cannot.
back up there, so there's.
Okay, if you could back up one drawing. Maybe the other way, sorry. Okay. We have to, the red is the toe of the levee, and we cannot have anything within that area. So all of the parking surface, buses, have to be 15 feet back from that. They are allowing us to infringe upon that a little bit right in here where there is an existing hard surface to allow for the turning of the buses into the facility.
The right-of-way parking, is a 39 stalls, is that what I read?
35.
35? And how many drivers are there currently?
I would assume 35. Or do you know something, Mike?
With 99 buses or?
No, I'm gonna say roughly 75.
Okay.
I'd say roughly 75. Probably a few more employees than that, because a number of the buses have para-educators that will ride on the buses as well. But that, I don't know where the overlap is. You have secondary and then elementary. Secondary, middle school, and high school will do drop off at both schools. And then generally, then they usually will do an elementary route, or can do an elementary route. It's sometimes.
Mike?
I don't have the numbers.
I don't either, Mike.
Sorry, so do we have an idea of how many employee stalls in total there are? I know there's 35 on the easement, but on the right-of-way button.
We're showing 85 stalls, if 35,
Okay.
16, 9, 9, 16. I believe there's another actually 15 along here. And there is space for a little bit of additional parking right through here where we really can't get a bus into that space.
And part of the reason I'm struggling with this is how many park there now. If you've ever been back behind Orange, where it is now, it's gravel, which really doesn't work. It's not a very efficient way to park. And plus the problem with Orange, when it's wet, it gets too muddy. When it's dry, it's too dusty around there. So that's one of the issues from, I think, the employee perspective that they're looking forward to, is having a much more regulated parking area. But I just don't know the numbers now, because they kind of park, because it's gravel, the parking kind of snakes all over the place in Orange.
What's the on-street parking situation throughout the rest of this neighborhood from city staff? Do we have an idea of that? Okay.
Could you repeat the question?
Give you a little more time. What's the on-street parking situation for the rest of the neighborhood. Is parking allowed on those roads, or do we just not have that right now?
I think it's just one side.
I don't know, must look at that. Maybe one side, definitely not both. but,
Sure.
I guess one note is, the other thing about kind of the traffic movements and parking in this area is, this was the previous street department building, so it's going to be similar traffic flows from what the neighborhood's been used to out of there. One other thing that we didn't note, I guess, in the kind of description of working everyone together with the city, with the schools and Met, is the other thing is, on the far upper left there, that is the city gasoline tanks. They're in talks about, they could fill up all the buses there as well. They really think that it would all work well in terms of the timelines for when the buses leave, and then the county also fills up there. The sheriff's office fills up there as well, and all the city vehicles, and they've really kind of done a good job of organizing that to keep the traffic flowing through the area pretty organized.
And one other thing, just to mention, from the school perspective, I hope I'm not wrong on this, but I think it's a transfer of $1 between the school district and the city for the property. And then the same with really the old orange building, I think is the plan there, to transfer that to the city like we did with, some of the housing like Williston Field and all that we saw a few years ago. But the property that's Progressive Tool, the school district is buying that. And so I think that's about a $1.4 million project, because that's a private property. And that's the payoff on that is about 6.5 years.
Now, I nodded my head, I would just say yes, it's what's proposed for $1. There's two
Yeah.
council people here, the council would have to approve that, obviously.
Yes,
so.
okay. I'm speaking of turn, yeah, school board as well. But
Didn't want to
it's been
speak
a
for you
good
guys.
partnership, and very good partnership, and continues to be.
Well, you had mentioned that this area had been used for something similar as far as the traffic or the, do you know, was there parking on the right-of-way at that time? So that, would this be pretty much similar? Is this a new issue, or?
Again, I was trying to look at the aerial to see, I think the cars are, I think there's parking on one side of Blackhawk and one side of Commercial. I don't know that for sure. I've never heard, and the reason I say similar, I've never heard any concerns of getting vehicles through there. And so they would have had garbage trucks and larger vehicles through here, similar to buses. I don't believe they've ever had concern with being able to get through the street.
Was there parking in the right-of-way before? I guess that was my question. Is this a new issue, or is?
Well, sometimes there's on-street parking. What they're asking for on 15th Street then is actually to park in the right-of-way, so they'd be off of the street. They'd actually be on that space normally between, if there was a curb in the sidewalk, they'll be establishing a parking lot, so to say, along that area.
Okay. Yes. So this is actually just, so even if they were on the street, you're saying there wasn't an issue before? So I mean, as far as traffic?
My only concern is that it's, this is kind of, it goes forever. So is a question for staff, is there any way that if there's a change of ownership or things change in time, that this could be re-looked at, at that period?
This is Anderson with staff. I mean, obviously, anytime a site is redeveloped, so if someone's going to come along and demolish it and build something different there, we can always reevaluate things. Otherwise, as long as the site area is zoned M1 industrial, if the schools were to decide to sell it in 20 years and a business were to come in there, as long as they were still allowed in the M1 light industrial area, we normally would not have a whole lot of say in that, as long as they still met all their parking requirements and all that.
Okay.
I guess my final comment would be is I see where Gary is coming from on setting precedents, but it sounds like because we have so many different individual circumstances, is that the reason for the recommendation? Because this is worked with on-site, on-street parking?
I mean, and again, we're going to look at these on a case-by-case. I think this is the second one that's come to you with the Surface Solution ones being tabled, but we've approved one other one, and really, you know, we're not necessarily in favor of parking on the parking in all locations, just where it makes sense. The Kugler one, which again, I think was on, 12th Street, so in close proximity to this area, made sense because it was a low-traffic area with no utilities underneath and a larger right-of-way, and this one fits those similar descriptions and criteria for not having a lot of traffic using this area. So, you know, one of the main concerns normally with parking on the right-of-way or having parking backing onto a street is you're creating more traffic conflict points. With a low-traffic street, they should be able to safely get in and out, we believe, with the extra right-of-way as well, so that there's space to do it.
I just have one final question. Since there are sewer lines and electrical lines correct through this street, will there be a problem for access should Mid-America or someone need to get to that?
It should not. You know, there's quite a few parking lots with easements across them with underground sewer, water, electrical, so we don't believe it'll be a concern.
So what do we need to do now? Make a recommendation,
A motion.
motion to go with the staff's recommendation for approval of allowing parking in the right-of-way?
Correct.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Second?
Let's do a roll call vote on this.
Tackett?
Yes?
Rankin?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Young abstains. Meahy?
Yes.
Buckles?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passed. We will jump back to C2, request by Dennis Hagnow to vacate a portion of David Street located south of West Parker Street. Staff report.
I'm going to hand out some additional information regarding this request, if you don't mind. All right. What I handed out was just some supplemental information regarding this request that was not in the packet. This is a request to vacate a portion of David Street located south of West Parker Street. And the applicant requesting to vacate this portion between 505 West Parker Street and 451 to 453 West Parker Street. The proposed vacate could have a negative impact on the surrounding area as the commercial property directly to the east at 451 to 453 Parker Street uses this area to gain access to its property. The properties to the east and west of this portion of David Street are used for commercial purposes, while the properties to the north are used for industrial and residential uses. The vacates along David Street south of West Parker Street. Both of these streets are classified as local streets. There are sidewalks located along both the north and south sides of West Parker Street, and there's no sidewalks located along this portion of David Street that's requested to be vacated. Vacating this portion of right-of-way would not appear to have a negative impact on drainage in the surrounding area. There is a 24-inch sanitary sewer line that runs through this portion of David Street, as well as overhead electrical. Also, there is a 6-inch water main running through this portion of property as well. The utility easement over the entire 80-foot would need to be retained if this roadway easement is vacated due to the depth of the sewer lines. And there's also a sewer line running through Parker Street. The area in question was originally owned by WCF&N Railroad, and in 1903, the railroad granted an easement for road purposes to the City of Waterloo. In 2012, the railroad sold this area to the applicant, who owns the adjacent property to the west at 505 West Parker Street. As part of the sale to the applicant by the railroad, the City of Waterloo also issued a quitclaim deed to the applicant, giving up any ownership interest in this area, even though the city never actually owned the area at any time in the past. However, the city's conveyance of a quitclaim deed specifically reserved all easements of record. Recently, the applicant did place barriers along the northern and eastern part of the property where there is located an existing access point to the property. This access was also used by the property owner to the east, who owns the Jet Lounge. The owner of that property questioned why the applicant was cutting off his access to his parking lot where the patrons park. The city looked into the issue and found that even though Mr. Hagenow does own the property, there still exists an easement over the entire property for road purposes. Therefore, the applicant should not have barricaded the area, as it is still technically considered a public use road. Fire rescue was recently made aware of the barricades being in place, and they are opposed to them being there, as it becomes a life safety issue, as they would not be able to get adequate fire truck access to the rear of the Jet Lounge property if a fire were to break out on the property. The applicant is requesting to vacate the public road easement found on that portion of property so it cannot be utilized by the public, and has been negotiating terms that would still provide access for the Jet Lounge. However, no terms have been agreed upon as of yet. Staff does have several concerns with this request. First, there is a 24-inch sanitary sewer line and overhead electric line that runs through this portion of property, as well as the water main too. If this area is vacated, the city would require utility easement to be kept over the entire area for maintenance purposes. As the road is only by easement now, this means that action would downgrade the easement from a public access road to a utility easement. Second, the property to the east at 451 to 453 West Parker Street currently uses the access on this portion of land to gain access to its parking lot for its patrons. If this area is vacated for those road purposes, then the property would not have good access to its property. The owner of the Jet Lounge did submit a plan to the engineering department showing a new access to their property coming from West Parker Street in front of their own property, and not using the applicant's property when the said addition was added to the building, but that has not been constructed yet, and I think that site plan is one of those things in your supplemental packet I had handed out. The property owner has expressed concerns on adding that access to the front of their property, as they may lose upwards of 10 parking stalls by doing so. The property is deficient of its required hard surface parking area. However, this issue cannot authorize a loss of public access. The applicant has further objected that the Jet Lounge patrons use the area for more than access, and have also used it for parking, causing trash and other nuisances that they have had to clean up. It would not appear that patrons would have the right to park on the privately owned public access road, but again, this issue cannot authorize the loss of public access. The parking lot also has alley access available. The two adjoining property owners have met to discuss if an acceptable plan can be developed for both parties, but no agreement has been reached as of yet. Until such an agreement is worked out, staff does not support this request, as it would eliminate a long-established access point to the adjoining property. Therefore, staff is recommending at this time denial of the vacate request for the following reasons. One, although the right-of-way area would not appear to be needed for a typical public road, there is a neighboring property owner who does use that area to gain access to their property, and vacating that would eliminate their primary means of access. Two, if the road, even if the roadway easement were vacated, utility easement over the entire 80-foot area would be required, as there is a sanitary sewer line, water main, and overhead electrical lines located within this area. Any questions for staff?
Yeah, this is Rankin. Looking at the picture, and I'm hearing you say that there's not access to the property. Is there, the space that's between the building and the yellow line, what is that? Is that parking area, or why is that not a suitable access to that property?
Are you talking about the Jet Lounge property?
Correct.
There is currently no curb cut there, so they technically wouldn't have an access. Yeah, but the site plan that I think is in your supplemental packet, they did show putting in an access point there, but they haven't done that as of yet.
Okay.
So going with Gary, they have that option to put an access right there? Is this what was in the letter saying that they were going to do but haven't done over the last 6 years?
Correct. Yeah, the site plan that's in your supplemental packet was submitted to the engineering department, who did review that.
So for clarification, they do have an option if they put a curb point in there, correct?
Correct.
I've got another question, probably for staff. Is it sort of unusual to have a right-of-way that's for ingress, egress, like a regular street right-of-way that's owned by a private individual?
This is Schrader with staff. Generally speaking, inside the city of Waterloo, that would be untypical to have a public street by easement where it is owned by private entities. I would say it's generally speaking unusual, but it is not non-existent. There are other examples of a road by easement. They are generally speaking fairly rare. They were more common in the unincorporated areas. A lot of the gravel roads, for example, in the county does not own that underlying right-of-way. It's still owned by the adjoining property owner, and the county has an easement for that use. It's still a public use road, and the county has that right to maintain it as a public use road, but they don't actually have fee title to that underlying land. And that was essentially what was done in this situation. The railroad owned the property, had a railroad right-of-way, granted the city a right to maintain a public road on it, subject to their rights to still use it for railroad purposes. And that was granted to the city in 1903. And it was maintained as a road. I don't know the details of exactly when it was cut off as a through road. I mean, it would have been when Broadway was reconfigured to its current, it curved. You can see the curve right there on the map in the upper right hand. Before that curvature exists, that road went through there, crossed the railroad tracks, and crossed in this location here. Basically the portion of David Street, which it wasn't always called David Street either, but that portion of what's now referred to as David Street south of Parker was basically less than 1 block stub of a street that was essentially serving 2 properties. So it hasn't been maintained like a typical public street, but it was still part of what was granted by the railroad as part of a public street by easement.
And the owner of the lounge there owns all the property around to that alley that comes in. Is that correct?
This is Schrader again. Yes, the owners of the Jet Lounge facility have somewhat of a irregular shaped parcel that there's the yellow areas on your screen. To the left of that is the Jet Lounge building. To the left of that is another business, and then the alley is off to the side of that. So up along Parker, they don't have frontage along that alley, but behind the Jet Lounge, their property then does wrap around and have frontage along that alley. So they do have a means of access via that alley too.
And that's a regular street, city-owned right-of-way alley?
That is a city-owned right-of-way alley, yes, but it is, as many other alleys are, fairly narrow, not well-maintained either, so it's not what would typically be a primary access point. It's not sufficient for fire department access purposes either.
But if there was a curb cut along the side of the building, that would be adequate access to the rear of the property for fire department, assuming it didn't have cars blocking it.
It could provide adequate access. There would also be an issue of loss of parking stalls. When the addition was done, they provided a site plan that showed 50 parking stalls, and they went before, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but they went before the Board of Adjustment. I think the calculated required parking stalls were 61, so based on how many they could show squeezing into that area, they were at 50, so deficient, went before the Board of Adjustment and received a variance to that number of 50 parking stalls. That included some parking right behind the building. A short time after the addition was done, they also went through an approval process to put an outdoor seating area right behind the building that took out 4 parking stalls there. To still maintain, their 50, they showed putting 4 parallel parking stalls along that side of the building. The fire department requires a minimum 20-foot fire access lane, but that cannot be located right along the side of the building. So I think a fire access lane potentially could be located in there, but at a minimum it would involve the loss of at least those 4 parking stalls. And also if the existing David Street was maintained and they were able to keep parallel stalls in there, then you're probably talking more like 15 parking stalls that it could be there.
Eric, before you leave, that question, you're talking about the parking. What is the requirement on this one? Is it still 4-to-1 ratio? Is it a 2-to-1 ratio for parking for every customer at the Jet Lounge? What are they coded for now to have parking, or are they required? Because I was reading through and they said they can have in between 15 to 40 patrons. So what would be the requirement for that?
I'll have to double check to verify.
How long have the barricades been up?
Someone else could answer exactly, but approximately fall. October. Taverns, nightclubs, facility, and similar facilities have a parking requirement of 1 space for each 50 square feet of floor area devoted to patron use within the establishment, and 1 parking space for every 3 persons of maximum occupancy as allowed per the currently adopted building code. Typically, the 1 per 3 of occupancy is what would generally be the most restrictive, which is therefore what would apply.
So we're looking at approximately 10 to 15 stalls? Am I thinking, is my math right? If you have, I'm just looking at the letter, if they have up to 40 patrons at one time, then you would need to have at least 10 to 15.
Their occupancy, I don't have their occupancy number in front of me, but it is much greater than 40. It's well over, I don't know if it is over 200, but at the time the 61 was calculated, 61 times 3 is what was being estimated as what the occupancy would be when they were looking to build the addition.
I see.
Because that's what we would have calculated by the occupancy divided by 3 to get to that 61 required, and they got a variance to that to go down to the 50. I think the currently posted occupancy load based on the annual inspections that the fire department get is slightly less than that, but I know it would still be more than 150. Because I know that based on the 50 stalls required, they were still sufficient there, so I know 50 times, or no, it'd be slightly less than 150. There's somewhere around 150 to 175 occupancy, I believe.
If there's no more questions for the staff, if there's anyone here that wants to speak for or against this project, please come to the microphone and state your name and address, please.
Thank you. And I'm Mike Young, here from the Dutton Law Firm. And to Matt and Steve in particular, Matt with becoming chair of the commission here, and Steve just joining it, just to address the elephant in the room. I'm on the commission. My real job is a lawyer. I explained that in my letter. But fortunately, since I've been on the commission, I haven't had anything have to come before the commission until today. But I'm here representing the applicant, Dennis and Rosalie Hagenow. And so it's a little awkward coming back and then coming forward again. But what I tried to do and explain in my email to everybody last night, and in the letter, was basically go through and discuss why we disagree with the blanket denial of the vacate request, and would propose an alternative that would address the concerns that the city had for an easement for utilities over the entire area, would address the fire department concern over access, and I believe it's, as Eric stated, I think it's 20 feet. Right now, there's 27 feet on the side of the building, from the building to the property line on the Jet Lounge, and as you look in the site plan that you have in the packet there, I believe that's 27 feet, and the owners of the Jet Lounge and their attorney are here too. And so if there was additional access needed for the fire, we could do a utility for that. But the discussion here has been about providing access and not about providing parking on this portion, Dennis Hagenau's property. And so that's where the rub kind of gets with just a blanket denial of saying all 80 feet has to be opened up, because that's where we've had the problems, and the problems have been with parking there. From a trash standpoint, and some really bad trash that, well, explained in our letter, that Dennis and Rosalie have had to clean up repeatedly. And also the issue that comes with that, and somebody brought it up before, as to how common this is for a public street, a private street, private property to be used as a public street for access or parking, and that's pretty rare. The other major concern is liability here, too, that the Hagenows own the property, and they own this part, and they're required to maintain it, keep it safe, keep it free of trash. But also there's the concern about liability. If it comes to parking, the concern there is, do they have to pay to pave the parking on the property? So what we're trying to do, and what they've been trying to do throughout this, is figure out what can be done to address the major concerns of the city, but also, to be very frank, to stop the parking and the misuse of their property that has come about. So when they went through in October and put the blocks up, that's what they were trying to address. And they've had much less trash there, much less parking. People have not, where people would drive through, or you'd wake up usually in the mornings and discover tire tracks driving through here, driving behind it, and then people going out this way. So it just was, there were a number of problems. And I think they're just looking to protect their property as well. So the frustrating part that you'll see, and it goes back to the site plan that you have in here, the party that's objecting to this is the Jet Lounge. What's frustrating about this is that I think if there wasn't parking there, and we can't say it's all from the Jet Lounge, but they're the ones here objecting to it. If there wasn't parking on there, this probably wouldn't be an issue and we wouldn't be here now. But as we were going through the process, I discovered when the Jet Lounge expanded in 2008, they promised to complete what you see on that site plan. And that would provide the parking, that would provide the 27 feet ingress and egress, that would provide the curb cut that was noted before. It hasn't been done, and it hasn't been done in that 6 years since. And we feel that we've been paying the price for that for as long as the Hagenows have owned their property, but especially since they worked and took title to the property that we're asking to be vacated now. So that's why we've requested what you see in the letter that's in your packet there, we ask that this be approved, subject to the conditions that the utility easement over the entire 80 feet be reserved. We understand that. That's what the city wants, and there's sanitary sewer and water. That was one of the slides that's in our board packet. Then also the easement for access for emergency vehicles to be reserved in an area to be determined pending completion of the Jet Lounge and figuring how their parking's going to work out. And everything would be subject to applicable city codes and regulations. But we just want to stop the parking on there and all the problems that have come with it. So that's why we're asking for this request. And I can answer questions. And Steve Scram's here for the Jet Lounge as well.
Mrs. Tackett, I have a question. I don't know if that's a question for you, Steve, or for you, Mike, but is there a reason why in 6 years that project hasn't been completed?
No, that's what we've been asking as well.
I'm Matt Oltruggy. I'm one of the owners at 451, 453 West Parker, the Jet Lounge that we're discussing. When we proposed our plans, a couple of different notes that I made, just a couple of the questions that came up, and specifically to your question, there have been several things done to the parking lot over the course of the time that we completed our addition. The plans were brought forward in 2008. This parking not being sufficient was just brought to our attention in October of last year. And then again, a letter that we had just received from Eric here in the past week. Andy and I will have taken down trees. These are one of the previous slides up there. There is a drainage out there. Most of the parking lot, if not around half of the parking lot, is paved. We will continue to do whatever else we need to do. But the issue with this is primarily due to access and not due to parking. One of the questions that you had raised before in relation to the approach, if the approach would have been put into the property, when we had plans, and I think Steve has a copy of that, we had plans to put in an outdoor seating area in the back, and we touched on this already. They moved some of our, and that was a year after these plans were approved. In 2009, we went to put in this beer garden area. They moved some of that parking to the side of the building. So we're not able to move the parking to the side and still have that approach. On the document from the city when we got the permit to do the beer garden, it shows that there's a David Street right away that would get our customers in and out of this parking lot. Primarily, if you use up that spot to the west of our building for parking, then there is no more room, as there's 30 foot that's left in total. And of course, we can't go, right, just like the fire department, we can't go, right onto the property. So leave 3 or 4 foot from the property, that only leaves us with 26 foot. And so they move the parking around to that side. I don't know if Steve wants to talk, and then I can answer a few other questions.
And I have a copy of the map that Matt just referred to. Is it okay if I hand that out to you guys? So you guys have a copy of what he's talking about? And this packet also includes includes the deed to the property. It shows the easement, just so you can see the transactional history here.
Do you need one?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Okay. You have a map. First word, one map. And my name is Steve Scram. I'm an attorney with the Beecher Law Firm here in town, and Eric Johnson and I are representing the Jet Lounge in this matter. I just want to emphasize a few points. First, the Jet Lounge has relied on this David Street easement since it purchased the property in 2005. The Jet Lounge's predecessors in title had also used this David Street easement for both access and parking. And the Jet Lounge assumed that such use would be continued into the future and relied on this use when it chose to purchase the business. The actual easement granting the City of Waterloo and the public the use of the David Street right-of-way was shown in the Jet Lounge's abstract, and this further cemented their belief that they had the right to use this to enter and park for their property. It should be noted, too, that this easement has been in existence since 1903, and you have a copy of that easement. So the public has had use of that area since, for that long, for well over 100 years. This reliance on this David Street easement was even solidified more when the Jet Lounge added a large addition to the property in 2008. This addition limited the access and the parking at the Jet Lounge. It is clear from the City of Waterloo site plans that they anticipated the continued use of the David Street right-of-way, and it was necessary for the proper access into the Jet Lounge. The lounge did not participate in the acquisition of David Street in 2012 when it was purchased by the applicant because they believe the easement sufficiently protected their rights to that land. And since the concrete barricades have been erected since last fall, which was done without prior notice to our clients, the Jet Lounge has seen a dramatic decrease in their business. Customers find it hard to access the lounge and to park, and customers are choosing they're choosing to avoid the business altogether. And this not only hurts the Jet Lounge, but it also hurts the patrons, the neighborhood, and the city as a whole. The concrete barricades are also an eyesore to the public. Regarding the trash issue, the Jet Lounge picks up the trash daily from the area surrounding their building and also from David Street when they had access to that area. This means that any trash that was left on the premises was picked up within 24 hours. The applicant also admits in their letter that they submitted with their packet that the trash is not directly attributed to the Jet Lounge, but rather the public in general. So this trash problem isn't a Jet Lounge issue, it's common to any public area. And that doesn't warrant a vacation of a public right-of-way just because there's trash. And even that trash, like I said, is picked up within 24 hours. There has been no police reports or any formal complaints documenting the existence of litter, and my clients, the Jet Lounge, adamantly dispute that that litter is a problem in that area. The applicant states that vehicles have driven through that property in that back half. The Jet Lounge will tell you that they've never seen a member of the general public pass through that area. They have seen railroad trucks and other vehicles access the railroad through that easement, and they think that the tracks that the applicant sees on his property must be from the railroad accessing the rear of that property to get to the railroad property. And if somehow that is a concern, the applicant can move his concrete barricades over to the non-easement land in order to prevent the railroad from cutting corners onto his property. So just in conclusion, I just wanted to emphasize that the applicant purchased David Street knowing that the public easement existed and knowing that the Jet Lounge relied on the David Street easement for both access and parking. So it's unfair for the applicant to now completely barricade the area and claim sole use of the David Street easement. The alleged trash and trespass issues which we dispute isn't sufficient to support a complete vacation of David Street. The City of Waterloo has given 2 notices to the applicant to remove the barricades, but to date, no action has been taken. And given all the issues that vacation would cause, we're asking that the city deny the vacation of David Street. Now, I think maybe if there's a few other issues that the other owner of the Jet Lounge would like to.
Andy Huffman, 1309 East Shawless, Waterloo. I just wanted to mention a couple other things. Where you see where the parcel's been, the yellow line between there and the building being the Jet Lounge, that is 30 feet. But you have a 3-foot section by the bar, and you've got 9 foot of parking, which is 12 feet. Now you're down to 18 feet. It's not sufficient for fire or police or for access at all. Secondly, our neighbor to the east, Corey from Corky's, couldn't be here tonight, but he wanted me to let you guys know that it's not only a problem for us, but that problem carries over into his property. The alley between us, the Jet and Corky's, is very small, not well maintained, and he's had continuous problems from the flow all being directed through there without the access to David Street. Thank you.
This is Tack, and I have a question maybe for either party or the city. I guess I'm processing everything through here, and I don't know if this is proper to say, but it sounds like just a hot mess. There's a lot of things going on, and what strikes me is, just so that I'm clear, this is a public street, correct? But it's on private property. So if there's parking be allowed in the right-of-way for the city, is there a permit on file, since this is an issue we've addressed several times? I mean, I've just heard that, so I'm wondering, is there, I know we're dealing with access, but That's something that struck me when you said, well, we're using that right-of-way for parking, but I believe that in city code, there has to be a permit to allow that, correct?
So it's private property with a public access easement over it, which is the way it was done in the early 1900s. So, I mean, if you look at the drawing, the aerial there, where that car is parked just to the left of the yellow, I mean, so they're parked on their private property there, outside of the easement, but they use the easement, obviously, to get into that. So that would be perfectly legal. Since it's just an access easement, I mean, if cars were parked inside the yellow area, there'd have to be some kind of modification to the easement to allow parking there. But otherwise, it should allow access through the yellow area to the other areas.
I see. And that's a question today. So it's not a matter of parking in the easement, it's just getting into the easement? Because otherwise, if it was parking, then they would have to have a special permit. Am I correct on that? Because it'd be a right-of-way?
We need to probably modify the easement in this case, would be the proper procedure. Because it's not right away, it's private property with an easement on it.
Okay.
It's confusing.
It is. And if I could get to that, because that really gets to the heart of the matter here. The issue and the problems we've had come from parking. And so when we first met, we tried to work it out, and I give credit to Shane and Eric and Noel, and brought us all together last month. We met in early March. And our first question was to the Jet was, do you want this for parking or for access? And please feel free to respond to it, but my feeling was, and I think everybody else, we didn't know. If it was just access, I think we're dealing with something else, and that we can work with, and that's what we've tried to put in our motion, suggested motion here. If it's the parking, though, that we have an issue with. And this is private property, so I don't, when Noel said that the city would have to change that, that would have to be with the property owners, with the Hagenows understanding as well. Because when it gets into the parking, it gets, what you were just hitting on and where it's so confusing is, we're concerned about liability, too. If, heaven forbid, something happened to somebody while they were parking there on our property, I'm concerned the Hagenows would be liable for it. And that's where the rub gets, again, with looking at the Jet and the site plan lounge. If the Jet completed their site plan as they promised to do 6 years ago, we probably wouldn't be dancing around the parking issue. It would just be access. If it comes down to if there's 30 feet and then 3 feet less, and then I thought it was, you said 9 feet, I guess if it's parallel parking?
9 foot for a car.
For a car, yeah. Or even the other way, if you went 18, you're still talking about 9 feet or 18 feet that is on the Jet Lounge that would be their driveway, their access, as indicated on the site plan. It'd just be amended a little bit. And then you're talking about only going over a few feet onto the Hagenhouse property. And that we can deal with, and that's what we've tried to put in that suggested motion, that if it's about access, the reason it's written there for emergency access is, I understand from the fire department, Eric, and you can help me on that, I think it's 20 feet that the fire department needs. And Dennis talked to the fire department, I think before putting the blocks up, and they were looking at his property there. He met with the engineering department as well before putting them up. Like to see about a permit and that sort of thing. So the fire department was fine with it on his property. With the Jet, it depends if people are parking there. If they're parking there according to the site plan, or, and really not right now because it's all still gravel.
So we are dealing with just access. So that yellow, all that yellow, that's your property, right?
Yeah.
You know, but the tricky thing is because it's access, you're required basically to force things with your private property. Am I understanding that correctly? You own the property, that's your private property, but because of circumstances, he's required by city code to.
And that's where the rub is. Yeah, that's where the rub is. Normally, you'd put up a fence on your own property. Yeah, exactly.
That's where I'm having trouble
to keep people
understanding.
out. In this case, what we're saying is we'll back off that if it's required for the access. But we don't want to just say all 80 feet of it is fine, and then the Jet or anybody else in the public can continue to park there, because I think it's stated in the packet and the report that you have in front of here, nobody's talking about parking. parking would be a different thing. And that's why we object to just the blanket denial of the application to vacate. What we'd like to do is tailor it back to what's needed, but then also, so we're still able to protect our property from trash, from misuse, and from liability primarily.
And that's what your motion is to
That's what-
vacate it
yes,
and then
yes.
add the easement, which would keep it in a legal,
Yeah.
so that,
Whether
okay.
it's
Just change the status
2
is what
feet
we're
or
looking at.
18 feet, yeah. That
Okay.
would be required for
So-
fire access, to make sure that there was a 20-foot minimum.
So it's a status change, just shifting
Correct.
it, so
Yeah,
it wouldn't, so
exactly.
that way, if there was anything legal down the line, if it had to hopefully never come before a court, it would, at least there would be wording in there that it wouldn't
Exactly.
fall, but yet
Yeah.
it would still allow them access.
Correct.
Okay.
Hi there. I'd just like to point out where the property that Mr. Aguinaldo purchased where David Street easement exists. If you look at the center line in between the two lots, that's about the center of that road that's the access to get into the parking lot that we have. So, there's really no way to say, or I guess we haven't been able to see a way to say that you can grant part of the access and not part of the access. That primarily, the David Street to the north, where you see that red truck, is a 60-foot parcel. The parcels that Mr. Hagenau purchased are two 40-foot parcels. So they're primarily, you need primarily the whole thing to access the property. And then, as we pointed out, that would allow parking against the side of our building, and would basically restore the neighborhood to how it's been the entire 10 years that we've been down there, where there's not heavy traffic going out of that alley. And we've definitely had a negative impact, as we've talked about before, customers coming in and out. The capacity question that you had earlier, we have a capacity of 159 people. There's a kitchen in the back of that property. There's over 4,000 square foot of finished space in the building and an 800 square foot beer garden. So like this last Saturday, for example, we had a wedding reception that was down there. We were pretty close to 130 to 150 people in the property, with people cluttering up the north part of David Street with parking on the side. Just kind of makes it difficult to get in and out of the property.
So if we're looking at a partial easement, are we looking at, you want to basically be responsible for like the center of the line towards your house?
Can we use the
Yeah.
pointer? Sorry.
I guess I'm trying to say, it seems like a pretty large access, so I'm trying to see what your request is versus what's
Okay.
there, and, because that's a lot
I
of
think you were talking
width.
about this.
Yes, like, I'm looking, are you looking as, to keep the access, would it be like the left side, yeah, right in there as you access, and then have the other side?
Well, and
Because there's a
also-
line down the middle, so I'm just trying to understand, like, where you're looking at for easements and,
The curb that's also been in the property curves right around like to the side and comes in, and it curves like right around here. You heard him mention that there's no sidewalk between this area, and this is a 60-foot section here for a typical road. So we have an 80-foot parcel, two 40-foot parcels that are in between us. So I can see where that's 20 foot too much. The problem is if you take off the 20 foot on this side, you're taking off part of that access and that entrance. So it's really the 60 foot that would be needed, and then of course, to connect our property, to allow them to enter the property. It's really difficult to see how we could split that without, and still maintain access.
I guess I'm still confused, because if I'm understanding, if you use all that, isn't there sufficient room on the other side? I mean, we're looking at just access. It just sounds like if we're going to start cutting to that, I'm just afraid that that might be misunderstood as potential parking. When I'm looking at the left side, looking at the size of that vehicle in the street versus that left rectangle, it seems sufficient enough to me, especially if you even, because it sounds like you want to use the paved asphalt or the cemented area. That's your current parking, correct?
Correct.
So you just need access to get a vehicle in and out.
Yeah.
It just looks like there's, looking at the width of that street versus the left triangle, I'm just looking at from this view, it seems like there would be sufficient access even with two vehicles coming in and out. It just seems like that's an awful lot of space you're requesting for just a small little area unless you're expecting 20 vehicles at a time. It just seems like it's a lot, and I don't know, maybe I'm not seeing it right, but it seems like the rectangle to the left would be sufficient access just to get to the parking. Because all we're discussing is access, correct? We're not talking about parking, just access to your facility.
Access is the main issue.
Right.
I think when they would have big events, there would be customers that would park out in the gravel just because they assumed it was part of the Jet Lounge perhaps. But generally it is access, and when there is parking there, it's generally overflow parking that customers just park there. You know, there's spaces that customers could find, they just park there for convenience. And as far as access goes, Matt's point is, you know, the access, kind of the entrance to those two parcels kind of goes right along that middle line. Would they need that whole space to go in and out 80 feet? I don't think they need 80 feet. That just is where the access into that, the current access, that's where the current access is located, and that's what Matt is trying to point out. You know, if they had ample access to get in and out and be able to park cars next to the Jet Lounge, you know, that should afford them a lot of, I mean, it should pretty much cure their access and give them extra parking that way too.
Is the entire shape, the whole outline, is that the entire area asking to be vacated or just the area to the right? Because there was an arrow, and I don't know what that means. All the, I guess I'm trying to understand why there's a line down the middle and what I'm looking at, so I understand what we're requesting.
There are 2 parcels.
Okay, so that just divides them.
Both parcels made up, yeah.
Okay.
That's just where they were filed.
Yeah, and that's where the concern came from, just having it be a blanket denial of the vacate request. It was because it is such a big area and it has been used for parking, and that's where the problems have come from. But I guess what we're proposing is for the access for both fire trucks and patrons and people as well would be the same, that we would be willing, and that's what we've tried to put in the suggested motion there, is to say that there would be access for that. However, to be fair though, part of the rub comes, what you see in the 2008 site plan and what was promised to be done by the JET in order to get the permit and the occupancy permit was to put the curb cut in there on their property. And that we do think is fair to ask the JET to participate in this too. We'll participate as well to the point necessary to provide for the access, but we'd like the JET to follow through with what they promised to do 6 years ago. Because then, if that happens, then we're all working together, and I don't think the parking should be an issue. And it sounds like it's really not. We're just talking about access, so that's why we proposed what we did with that suggested motion.
But that site plan was modified to allow parking along the side of the Jet. So that site plan that Mike handed to you guys isn't complete because now there's parking along the Jet Lounge on that boundary. So now, because of that parking, there isn't a full access. They need to use the easement land in order to access that side of the building.
And that's this provision here. And that's why we worded the motion in a way that would take that into account. What you see on this that was handed out, there are 4 parking spaces that are parallel. So that would be the 9 more feet. So then you're probably talking additional. It'd need to go farther onto the Hagen House property in order to accommodate that. And that we would, but we'd also like, I don't know if on that they show the curb cut.
No,
Do you show the approach there?
When they made when they approved the beer garden, they were taking out the entrance there by allowing the stalls to go all the way up to the street, basically. That's how we understood that. So then, and then noted on there is the David Street right-of-way, and then it's
Yeah.
noted in the paragraph below that we would have right-of-way through David Street.
Yeah.
And then the
But
permit is dated on the
okay.
back side of
But
that.
I think the point being, if there were curb cuts made along the Jets property for the Jets parking lot, and it stretched over to the Hagen House property, that's doable, and that's what we've tried to say in the motion. We can live with that, and that would be a compromise we gotta live with, because hopefully that would stop the parking altogether, so.
Can you,
Dennis Hagen House.
sorry, can you really quickly just show us where the current barriers are at?
Yeah, they are.
On the east and the north side of that complete property.
Okay.
Yeah, or is
Okay.
it, yeah, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, this is north. We're looking at it from the north. Yeah, so there.
And those have been up since October?
And then the concrete, they're bigger, they're concrete rectangles, I don't know.
They're
6
2 foot by
feet
2
or-
foot by 8 feet.
Yeah, so they're the larger ones that are around.
When you purchased the property in 2012, did you, I assume you noticed that there was a public easement, correct?
Yes, I did. That's why I went to the city.
This is Dennis Hagenow.
Dennis Hagenow, I own the property at 505 West Parker. I pursued this property knowing that it was the railroads, knowing that the city had an easement, which at that time I assumed was a utility easement. And as I put the blocks up there, I made provisions for the utility easement, okay? I went to the city attorney and requested a quitclaim deed, which I received. I assumed that the city was giving up their easement except for the utilities. Prior to setting the blocks, I went and talked to Matt and told him that I was going to be doing that. Now, that's different than what Mr. Hoffman told you, that I did it without notifying them. I put the blocks in. I was putting some stakes along the south side so I could put a warning yellow tape across there. He came out and talked to me and asked me if I was still willing to sell part of the property to him. Now, that was our discussion when I first talked to him, and I said, sure, what do you need? He said, well, I don't know. Never did they come back to me and tell me what they wanted. When we had our meeting with Noel and a couple of these guys, we were supposed to put a proposal together for them. Mike Young put a proposal together that had 3 options for them. There was a purchase option, there was a lease option. I am willing to take care of the fire department because I know they need the access. Now, right now, they said there's 30 feet there. Let's say that 30 feet exists. That's great plenty. Now they're saying because somebody approved 4 parking stalls along there, that now that doesn't hold true. I have been trying to take care of that. It was in such bad shape because they have people parking in that all the time. Now, their parking that was supposed to be taken care of and paved, nothing has been done. The approach off of Parker Street, they did not do. And when I put up the blocks, people started driving in where they were supposed to. But there was nothing there to support it, and it became a mud hole. Well, it's probably been a couple of months. They came along and put some real heavy gravel in there so that people have access. If they had taken care of what they were supposed to do at the time in '08 when they made the addition, there would be no problem now, none. Now, my intention with the blocks, knowing that I needed something solid on the bottom, and I had Miller fence that was, in the wintertime, was going to put a fence around it to secure it for me so that I could use it for some secure storage. I never got to the fence because this came up, so I didn't get the fence in the wintertime when he said he was going to give me a good deal for the wintertime. I'm very frustrated with this. Like Mike Young mentioned, I'm very concerned about liability if they're allowed on that property, because I own it. Am I then liable? I would assume I am. Now, when I was going to put the blocks in, I came down, and I believe it was Eric I talked to, and said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put these 2-foot by 2-foot by 8-foot blocks around the perimeter of my property. I said, do I need a building permit? He says, no, as long as it's not over 4 feet. Okay, when I put the fence up on top of them, then I come back and get the permit. Yes. So through all of this, I figure I'm doing it right. At least, at a minimum of 6 times, I went down to their department, discussed with them what I was doing, what I was intending to do, and they had absolutely no problem. The only problem that came up was I don't know whether it was a fire inspector or a chief or somebody, came along and said, I didn't have a wide enough opening so that they could get their fire truck in. They need 20 feet. No problem. He said, I'll give you plenty of time. It was winter. And in this, I've assumed that there possibly I was going to have to move some of the blocks. And I figured that when I did that, I would move the one that made it actually 22 feet. I've been trying to do this by the book. I have communicated all the way with everybody I thought I could communicate with. If I thought this was a problem, if I knew that this was something that existed, I would have taken care of that at the time that I got the quitclaim deed from the city. And I don't believe at that time there would have been any problem. When I had it surveyed as 2 pieces of property. I received it as 1. Now, if I'm forced to move those concrete blocks, that makes the property of absolutely no value to me, and I don't see how the city can tax me on that property if it is of no value. If the Jet wants to park on it, which they were, nobody was parking behind their building, they were all parking out there on what I now own. If they want to park there, they're going to have to hard surface it. But maybe they're assuming they don't have to hard surface it because it's been 6 years, they haven't had to do what they were supposed to do. So why should they think they have to do any more? I'm sorry I've been so long. I own quite a bit of property in the Waterloo area, and at the meeting where they said, we pay taxes, and all he's got is a little rental property. I pay 3 times the amount of taxes that the Jet Lounge does on property tax. They said, well, we supply jobs. I supply jobs too by contractors that do work for me. And since the first of the year, I have spent, I think, a little over $100,000 on contractors in Waterloo. So yes, I contribute to Waterloo. Do you have any questions for me?
I do have questions of the Jet Lounge. Just a couple of short, just to verify. Sure. Just real quick for a timeline. 2008, you were given a site amendment to get the parking and all that done. What was the timeline to have that project completed?
We weren't given any timeline. We didn't become aware of not, I spoke with Dennis Getz when we received a letter from him in October that stated the improvements weren't finished. We pulled out the trees that were in the back portion of our lot. I explained to Dennis at that time, the city engineer, that we had put in a drain and that most of, part of the lot was paved. This was, I believe, October 17th, somewhere around that time frame. So there was no chance. Plus, it was about the exact same time that the whole access to the property was blocked with blocks. So, there would have been no opportunity to get that done last fall to now.
I guess I have a question because I'm a business owner, and I know if I was going to get that project done, you just said that you didn't have a timeline on it. It's been 6 years. You estimate it took 6 to 10 years or so to get that project finished? Or when did you get the beer garden done? When did you get that?
2009.
2009.
After this.
Okay, so there's 2008, you proposed you were going to have this original plan done. Then you came back in 2009, and it's 2014. When do you propose to have this completed?
This was just brought to our attention.
Yeah, but that's not my question. There's a lot of time that's elapsed between 2009 and 2014. I'm saying for the site plan, for the improvements you want to make on your property, what is the timeline that you expected to have that work completed? I'm having trouble buying that it's an indefinite project, especially if you're a business owner.
I don't work with contractors as much as Mr. Hagan, also I'd have to obviously look into doing that. I don't know exact timeline. I would guess within a month or two.
We were just made aware of this, I guess, of the deficiencies last October. I would imagine that it would be taken care of this contracting season.
So between 2009 2014, you didn't realize there's any deficiencies?
We didn't receive, we got final write-off on the property. I asked about what permits needed to be pulled. No permit needs to be pulled to pave a parking lot. No one ever brought this to our attention until October of last year. We continued over the course of those 5 years to make improvements to our outdoor area, but I guess the entire encompass of the lot wasn't completed, and it still isn't today. So, but all of this, the letter that we got from Dennis was in October, and then we just received notice of a letter coming. I haven't seen the letter. I've got an email copy of the letter from Eric from the end of last week.
I don't know if anyone comment. I've worked with construction and development in other cities, but typically there's usually, especially as a business owner, there's usually a timeline because you want to think, I want to get this open, I want to get customers in, I want to increase my revenues, and again, tax base and everything, but you want to increase it for, your profit margin. So I'm wondering why was this taking so long?
The building was signed off in January of '09, and then
Okay.
the beer garden permit that we got in the spring or summer that you have a copy of, that was done then, and that was come and signed off. Like I said, no contact from anyone from the engineering department in 2009, 10, 11, 12, not until October of last year. So, we'll definitely take care of any issues that we have, the deficiencies in our parking lot. But this issue before the commission today is primarily about gaining access. And that would be one of the things that, we're not able to have access to get back there as far as having somebody come in unless it's through that 30-foot alleyway on the side of Corey's building.
Regarding the completion of that project, the Jet Lounge actually had an old site plan that contained a number of different discrepancies from the final site plan. They were made aware of that final site plan last fall. So they believed everything had been done based on their site plan. And when they received this new site plan, that's when they became aware that there was issues that they didn't get done. And I know in the city's file, it actually showed all the site plans. It showed the site plans that my clients relied on, and it showed like the new site plan that Mike gave you, and then the subsequent ones when they added the stalls. So I think with the contracting issues, it was just a matter of shuffling the wrong site plans around.
The plan that you have with the beer garden plans on it shows the back part of the lot, existing gravel. That's not the engineer plan that was presented in 2008. There's the two different plans you have in both your packets that show two different.
And so, I'm sorry, just a quick question. So Mike, along that, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Eric, my little train of thought, trying to keep the pieces together. You're saying that if their site plan, their final one is completed, then with the proposal that you put forward, that it should satisfy both parties as long as they complete their final site plan. Is that correct?
Correct, because it would allow for that's correct, because it would allow some variation in there, whether if we need 2 feet or 14 feet, whatever it is. We've been talking about a lot of the numbers from the 30 feet from the side of the building. And we've got 30 feet from the side of the building, and then we've got 20 feet that the fire department needs. And so we're saying if those two don't quite match up, we have that with the suggested motion you've got in front of you. It has that flexibility to encompass it.
Eric Schrader. The motion, as stated by the applicant, is not workable because it just says emergency access. So, you know, that does not provide access to the jet. The other thing is, you know, the applicants or the jet did a reconfiguration to move some parking stalls. So the layout, as was with the original plan in 2008, would not work as shown. So it would have to be reconfigured. But yes, they do have deficient hard surface parking will have to be addressed. And I do take a little bit of exception to their claim that they have no knowledge of this. I can't assert as to what letters may or may not have been sent before the one in October of 2013, but their engineer that they hired, that they paid for, submitted a site plan that showed the paving. The ordinance requires paving, whether they're aware of it or not, and in their letter that they submitted to the Board of Adjustment requesting a variance to go from 61 stalls to 50 parking stalls, says that it would be paved. So they knew that they needed to pave the stall. And I still agree that that's a separate issue, and they can't just pave as that 2008 site plan shows, but there was knowledge that they needed to pave, or there certainly should have been.
To the owners of the jet, it's been brought to, you know, it's been mentioned that the barriers have been up since October. Can you just speak to the economic impact of those barriers on on the existing business?
The Jet's been open for 63 years, and it's a neighborhood bar, restaurant, and our numbers are not numbers that go like this. We're kind of a flatline business. The same people come in. We don't see peaks and valleys very often. We've got, with the addition, at least 5 years of taxes that we can show for our fourth and first quarter, which is this is what's been affected October till now. We can show you our sales, our purchases from our vendors. We can show you our actual sales numbers, and you will see for the first time in the last 2 quarters, we've dropped off over 40%. I'd like to make just a couple other quick comments if I could. I'd like to say that I pursued buying these 2 parcels from CN also. I spoke to the city and our legal counsel over 7 years ago when pursuing these 2 parcels. And I was told by the city and my legal counsel that there's an easement there, been in place for over 100 years. So I didn't purchase them for $500 a piece, I might add. It's a very, very inexpensive piece of land. You've got a bar restaurant right there that is probably not going to be in existence with this happening. You've got a business next to it that's being damaged by those blocks there. And you've got an eyesore with blocks sitting up in the middle of an area where businesses are supposed to thrive. You've got 2 owners who put in over $400,000 into an area that doesn't have a lot of money being going into it. We sat down with the city a month ago and we tried to negotiate to make this workable for all parties. The proposal that we were given, the 3 proposals that Mr. Hagenhouse discussed, were for us to buy 18 feet of that 80 feet for $20,000, in which he purchased for less than $500 18 months ago. Okay? You can't negotiate fairly when you start there. There's no way to do it. And I just want to let you know that it looks bad, and it's going to hurt businesses to have an area right there blocked off to store for materials for whatever a landlord would need to use for. I think there's better places than in that commercial area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that hasn't spoke that would like to speak on any of these topics? Any other questions from the board, commission?
This is Anderson with staff. I just wanted to make note to the email that you were handed, some notes on that from the city standpoint and why our staff report is recommending denial. I don't know if you have that in front of you. It has the Eric Schrader at the top. The first page, fifth paragraph down, it says, still Mr. Hagenow is willing to provide the City of Waterloo with easements. Paragraph. We already have the easements, so there's no reason to be willing to provide them to them. The city has the easements it needs for this area, and there was an access easement included with those utility easements because of the layout of the lots. You know, again, when the city looks at vacating any roads, alleys, right-of-ways, we always look at both abutting property owners to make sure that we believe that it is going to work for the betterment of the city, the betterment of those neighborhoods. You know, with this access easement entirely vacated of 80 feet, you know, and you can see on that aerial there's a car parked next to the Jet Lounge. It obviously pulled in sideways. There's probably about 8 to 10 stalls right there along the Jet Lounge that they'd be losing if they had to use it as their driveway. Those are probably very popular places to park next to the door. You know, they talked about the business next to the east and driving down the alley. That's confusing for people. They're driving past the business, they're coming off of Broadway, and having to curve back around behind the building. It just doesn't make any sense. They talked about putting a fence on the easement. That would require additional city actions as well. So I'm not sure where or who Mr. Hagenow talked to about putting barricades or any fencing on the easement. There's specific encroachment agreements and things like that that would have to go through. You know, going to the letter from Mr. Young, it talks about a blanket denial. This is a standard, like I said, a standard recommendation when we do not have both abutting property owners working toward the same goal or where we think it will work. The next paragraph down talks about the property has not been used since the turn of the century. I guess, you know, again, in our evaluation of that, that's not true. The Jet has continuously used it for access in this area. In terms of the quitclaim deed, Mr. Hagenow did work with Dave Zelfer in the attorney's office. It was our understanding in the council communication to the city council for that approval talked about it was for title concerns. As you can see on the quitclaim deed itself, we did retain all easements, so we were aware of the easement. We assumed they were aware of the easement. We were not in any way trying to get rid of the easement in that process. And of course, to vacate an easement, it comes to this commission. It doesn't happen through a quitclaim deed. So, you know, Mr. Hagenow, I understand his concern for liability on the property. You know, if there's concerns for liability on property, you probably should buy a property with a public access easement on it. Again, going down to, talks about the additional Waterloo Fire Rescue. They have not looked at this as being acceptable to being vacated. They do not see I think it's 27 or 30 feet along the road, along the building as being acceptable for fire rescue. So they're not in favor of this as well. That's where we came up with our staff report and our recommendation.
No, can I add to the easement portion? Initially, I was the first person that Mr. Hagenow, he and I did a bunch of research trying to figure out the situation on this particular property. And I just want to say real quickly, there was no mention of blocking it off, and I know that when the railroad finally agreed to sell it to them, but it was suggested that we give the quitclaim deed. Dave Zellifer and I specifically spoke on this, and I specifically told Mr. Zellifer, do not get rid of any of the easements for two reasons, the utilities, and if you get rid of that, you will be harming the Jet Lounge and they will no longer have access to that property. And Dave Zellifer followed through with that and made sure all those easements stayed intact. So.
And if I could add, just to get us back here, not to belabor this anymore, but I do take exception with the thought that all of this has to be a blanket denial when we're not talking about parking. I think we're talking about access. Getting back to what I suggested in the motion, Eric mentioned that it wouldn't work for fire as a suggestion. Again, no, I don't think you're talking about allowing parking on there, correct?
I mean, right now, it's just an access easement, so
Okay.
my understanding of the easement is the only thing that they can legally do is use it for access, unless Mr. Hagenow would give them permission to park on it.
Okay. Then I would respectfully request of the commission that the vacate request be approved, subject to the condition that an easement for access be reserved in an area to be determined pending completion of the paving at the jail lounge sufficient to meet applicable city codes and regulations. I think there's enough room in there to do it, but the issue gets to be, and we've gone through everything else about the time and the cost and everything to get the property, and then to keep the property clean, to keep the property out of harm's way with liability, gets to the parking. And that's what we're trying to address here now, and that's what we're asking the commission to address, is the parking. And so that the vacate be there for the parking, with a reservation for whatever's needed for access, because as I understand, Noel, understand the Jet Lounge, what they're looking for is access for parking, or access to the property, but not all 80 feet.
When you speak of parking, are you talking about the parking that occurs up against the building, or parking that would occur in the right-of-way?
The parking that would occur in the right-of-way, and that's where we're finding all the trash. And it's, well, I don't need to belabor it, it's bad trash. Rosalie was the one that reminded me of the syringes, but it's, yeah, it would be parking in the right-of-way. But we also think the Jet has to do their part by completing their paving operation that I think they've been required to do for the last 6 years. And that would require a curb cut. If it required extended curb cuts over ours, that would be reserved with the access, the easement for access. And that's what we're going for. But we really are trying to stop the parking on the right-of-way.
Just as a note of reference in terms of what Mr. Young was talking about, just for access, the zoning ordinance would normally require 24 feet if you had 90-degree parking on both sides of an access point. If you only had 90-degree parking on one side, it would normally require 20 feet.
Is there parking on both
We
sides?
suggested with the motion to just say applicable city codes and regulations.
Is there parking on one side now, or is it on parking on both sides? So, in other words, if there's parking just where we're seeing that car, you're saying that we need at least a 20-foot easement, but if there's parking both sides, it needs
That's my
extended
understanding is
24.
Mr. Hagenow would use it for storage or something else, so it wouldn't be parking on the other side of, if there was 20 feet left there.
No, I think what we're saying is we would reserve the flexibility to provide the access. If the blocks had to be moved back, they would. But again, for access, not for parking.
Eric Schrader, City Planning, just one more time. The main concern with the wording as proposed by the applicants, which they, in what he just spoke a little bit ago, kind of modified it to get rid of the wording of emergency vehicle access to just say access. But the other part that is still concerning in being proposed is pending completion of paving. So, what he's asking you is that this be vacated, but that an access easement of some to-be-determined fashion would be provided when their paving is done. The fire department is adamantly opposed to that because that does not provide immediate fire access to that facility. So.
And if I could just clarify that we would like the paving to be done in the Jet Lounge. It's been 6 years, and I think it should be done, and I believe everybody here has agreed that it has to be done. Once the paving was completed, I think they do need to get to that quickly, but it would still, as the motion is proposed, it would still provide the flexibility. But it would put, the Jet Lounge is ultimately responsible for finishing up the paving that they promised that they would do in order to get their permits in 2008. And what the proposed motion would be to allow that flexibility.
I have a question, like, on the motion, though, is it possible, I'm just hypothetically throwing this out, if you modify that motion to show that, that the easement, the 80, instead of saying reserved, can you put an easement for access to emergency vehicles immediately? I mean, take out that pending time, because, I mean, if something happens, you want to know that there's emergency vehicles available for patrons or anything, you want to make sure they have access in case anything should happen. I'm just thinking safety and they need access.
I just want to make a couple comments. When you look at that lot, the only pavement issue is the back third back there. Okay, the rest of it's pavement. So we have adequate space. We just don't have enough pavement in the rear of the property. Okay? So we keep coming back to this when I think we're here today to talk about the two parcels next to it and what they've done to the businesses in that area. And you ask, how soon can we do that? Well, the illegal blockage that's been there since October, in which the city has told them to move it in January, said to move it in March, it's not been moved continuously. It's damaged our business to the point where it's going to be difficult for us to pay for that. We've had 6 months of damages. I mean, we're looking at a business that's been around for 63 years that a lot of people in this town know as a second home or a place where they will get a burger. It's going to be gone because of a parking lot to store things. It's not a storage area. It's a commercial area where I've invested close to $500,000. It's going to go upside down for parking or for material to sit there. I mean, I'm having a hard time understanding today, from all the dialogue that's gone on since October, how we're even here today having this discussion.
You understand the area in yellow is not a parking field, though, it's access, correct?
It's access, and it's been used for parking also, yes. It has been. It has been.
It's used for access and utility easements and...
It's its primary use, yes. Yes, it is. It's what people know. I mean, I'm not sure if it was Noel or Eric who made the comment that you come off Broadway, it doesn't, a consumer doesn't make a decision. Some people say, I'm going to this place. Some people are driving and say, well, I thought I'll stop there. Well, if the access they've known their entire life is gone, they're past the property, and they're moving on to somewhere else in this lost business. We've watched it with our own eyes. We've had our customers tell us that. We can't get in and out of there. It's impossible. We can't do any promotional stuff.
Are the blocks still there?
Yes.
Oh, they are.
They're supposed to be removed in January, March, and then again 2 weeks ago. Prior to this meeting, they were supposed to be removed, and they're still not removed. We were supposed to address these issues today with those blocks gone, and they're still there today. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Now, would somebody like to make a motion?
I do have, I guess, one little bit of discussion, just as a commissioner. After 63 years of the business, 40% lost in the time that the barriers have been there. While the alternative sounds good, frankly, I wish that the barriers had been moved back to the proposed locations prior, so we could make an educated decision based on 40% lost where the barriers are currently at. Makes it very tough for us to come back and say, well, you're going to have 20% loss, or you're going to have no loss. We can't tell because the evidence demonstrates 40% loss. And frankly, if it's fine to move it now, then I guess I'm not quite sure why it wasn't fine to be done in the first place.
If I could get to that, or Dennis can speak to it as well, that's the reason for the request to vacate, that I think the code enforcement letter, Eric, came out in, is it January? Okay. And then we applied and said, this is our property, we're requesting that the access, or the city easement be vacated. And so that's why the vacate request is before you. And so that's why it has been, because it's been pending, because we filed this.
Okay.
As for the 6 years that it hasn't been paved, though, that's on the Jet Lounge, and now the chickens are coming home roost on that.
I agree with you. Frankly, they deserve to be slapped on the wrist, or even more so, for not doing what the agreement and the site plan calls for. However, the issue before us is to address this easement. And it's very tough for me to be in support of Mr. Hagnow, when the negative impact on the business is as great as it is, and the alternative proposals, which could have been put in motion since October when the barriers were put up, I've got to choose whether it's 40% loss for a business, which makes it, like they said, very tough after 63 years to maintain, to either, it's sort of an all or nothing, and it just puts us in a really hard spot. Yeah.
I see where you're coming from. I guess my bottom line that I'm concerned about is it's private property. I guess I don't understand how this all came to be. If he owns the property, I feel like, at least I understand, that when it's your property, it's liability, it's, who takes care of that. I don't know how this whole situation came to be, and I've heard the history. And I do, as a business owner, I totally understand. I mean, capital, it's tough, it's a tough economy, and I really feel for you on that. But it's a tough call because it's your private property. And that's where I'm having trouble with this whole thing, is having a private property owner being told this is how it has to be. I just wish there was some agreement that you could work together, but it sounds like this has been very contentious over a very, very long time, and I don't know if there's an easy answer for this, but I think it's a tough decision before the commission. But it's the private property issue for me, and it's hard because I'm a business owner. I understand the profit, you want to make it right, you need that capital to make it right. It's been a long time, and I understand that, I know it's hard, but then it goes back to the owner, just like the owner of the property over there. I just think, what kind of a precedent are we setting, or what can we do to clarify this so this never happens again to anyone else? Because I think there's some people here who have been put in a rock and hard place on both ends, and I hope somehow during this time we can figure out something. I just don't know what it is. I just hope it at least addresses both issues, but I don't know. I just think this is a mess that just somehow needs to be fixed for the future.
There was an answer to that. There was an answer for us to all not be here today. We offered to buy one of the parcels from him, let him keep the other one. We would move the blocks for him at our expense, and that wasn't good enough. The proposal we got in return was to buy it at 1,000% markup in 18 months.
And I just want to emphasize, the applicant, this is private property just recently, but it's been a public access easement since 1903. That was reflected in the purchase price, I assume, for the property, that this, the value is so low that he bought it for. It's private property, yes, but he's assuming all those public easements. So I understand your concern, but at the same time, the applicant kind of assumed that risk, I feel.
It's 6:45. We do not want to get back into tit for tat. I would respectfully disagree on the pricing and the timeline, but we're here talking about the parking and the access to the easement, and we've tried.
The pricing is the proposal that was sent between your office and Beecher's. There's no.
It's a separate agreement, I think. We need to act on the vacate.
I would like to say that I have no doubt that any of us feels this is anything but a soup sandwich, but I think can't be in favor of a vacation unless something that can be worked out between the two groups. I mean, I don't see how we get to a vacation on this. Ultimately, I think the city should, if there is a need there, the city should own the property. and it shouldn't be an easement, it should be owned by the city if in fact there's a necessity of it being owned and utilized by the public. But whether that has any chance of happening, I don't know. But having said that, I don't even know what the what the proposal is. Are we looking to deny the request? Is that the staff's recommendation, is to deny the request for vacation? Because of that, and I would like to see something worked out for you folks, and I think that's what has to happen. Otherwise, if we go the other direction and approve a vacation that's sort of ambiguous, I think, or possibly vague, or whichever, wouldn't probably be the right thing. If something came back that was, it sounds like you folks are willing to work together to a certain extent. It sounds like you folks want to get your access. I don't think that it could probably be worked out that you're going to be able to park in the easement, and that's probably what the easement says. It's for getting in and out. It's not for parking in. But if you allow enough access easement for them to park beside their building, for the fire department to get in, and so on and so forth, that seems to be a workable scenario. Exactly what those numbers need to be as far as dimensions, I think needs to be worked out. So
We're all ears for suggested language, so we don't have to keep coming back and do that. So that's what we try to do.
I guess I would like it brought back to us with some sort of definitive thing that says this is what this dimension will be, and both parties are workable with that. And I understand the whole issue with the back parking lot. We muddy things, I think, when we start talking about that. I think we need to decide what we're going to do with this easement, if we're going to do anything, or if it's just going to stay there the way it is. Something needs to be worked out.
Going along with Gary's, if this gets denied, does it give parties a chance to come back and have everything addressed? And I know what you're saying, Mike. I just feel like there's more than just one issue at hand. It seems like there's multiple issues here, and I think that's what's sounding like. And as far as the commission, if I'm hearing right, it's getting very complicated, and I think we're just trying to maybe deal with the access today, but it sounds like there's a lot of other issues that need to be on both sides.
Eric Schrader, City Planner, yes, if this were denied, there is still opportunity. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation only. The applicants could still choose to try and forward it on straight to City Council, or they could request to come back to the Planning Commission with a revised request, or with the same request that has some sort of supplemental agreement between parties.
If the recommendation is for denial, is it better to table it and trying to have the parties work on it together on the backside and bring us, in a future?
My only concern with that is that we've been trying to get the two parties to do that for some time, and it hasn't worked. So in my personal opinion, no, I think it would be better off to have the request be denied, and that's going to, in my opinion, force the parties to probably come together on a little bit more even negotiating terms, I would say.
One of the other reasons, I guess, Anderson with staff, that we recommended denial instead of tabling it again is that normally for code enforcement issues, when someone's found to be in violation of something, we will generally give them some time while it's going through the procedures. The fact that this one's been tabled multiple times, you've heard about the loss of business from the barricades being there. We recommend denial because I will be telling code enforcement and our legal department to move ahead with whatever we need to do to move the barricades if you recommend denial today.
Noel, can you elaborate on that? And what about the pavement?
I'd have to talk to the attorneys to find out exactly what we need to do to move the barricades, either ourselves or get a court order to have someone else move them.
Will they address the paving issues?
They've been there for 6 months. It's obviously damaging someone else while it's going through the process. It's is quite unacceptable at this point.
To be fair, I think when the letter came in and Dennis went to the city, the request was, we'll just submit an application to vacate the request. What we're here today, and what we've tried to do is, Gary, to get exactly what you've talked about, is to try to get something that was workable, that allowed for the access but denied the parking, because that's the issue. That's the issue that's hurting us the most. And so that's why, if there's another suggestion, if anybody else has a suggestion from the Jet Lounge, or the city does, to work with us to try to get something that is workable, that reflects the fact that this shouldn't be for parking, for all those reasons we've discussed, but it will provide sufficient access, we're all ears. And we're all ears right now to do it. Otherwise, we'll be dealing with it next month as well.
If they park right now on that easement, isn't that a code violation in the city? I mean, could Mr. Hagan call if they find that there is parking on that right-of-way, or is that just a gray area? Gray area? I just feel like I'm saying, I feel like it's more lopsided. I think it should be fair. I feel like if he needs to move the barricades, then they in turn need, with that being gone and business starting to pick up, people feel comfortable coming back. I think there should be a timetable to get that payment done. The barricades, but I think somehow, I think it should be fair on both sides. I think that's what you're saying, Mike, that if you move the barricades, then the payment should be done in a timely manner. I don't know if there's a way to do that so that it's fair for both parties.
I have contacted someone regarding moving the barricades. In our communication with the Jet Lounge, they have never indicated how much they needed. They have never indicated any counteroffer as to what they were going to pay.
That's factually incorrect. We have it in writing.
Let me say this, Gary, it gets to your point in terms of waiting, okay, coming back, denying it tonight and then coming back to see what was needed. The problem we get is you've got the site plan in front of you for the Jet, and you've got Eric and Noel talking about how they're going to crack down and force the Jet to come up with their paving. Once they do that, then we'll know. But until we don't know that, that's why it's been 6 years, and that's where the rub is. So a lot of frustration is if the city's got another alternative, or if anybody else has an alternative that would allow us to protect the property and keep the parking out, let's talk about it now. And that's what we've tried to do with that suggested language in there. Because it's different than what the application is. It's saying, no, that the approval is approved subject to conditions. And subject to condition sounds like it's up to 20 feet or 24 feet, and that's why it says to applicable codes.
I think we need to move on to a vote on the item that's on the agenda. It's now almost 7 o'clock.
Do you have a motion? Do you have a motion?
Yeah, I would move to, and I assume that the request is to vacate all of, is that what the?
That was a request.
To vacate the whole easement.
80 foot?
The 80 foot. And I would, and we've stated it enough times, I guess. I'm just gonna go ahead and I'd like to make that motion that we follow the recommendation of the staff to deny the request for the vacation.
Second. Sorry, just for clarification, then when we vote yay, we're voting for the denial, correct?
Correct.
All right, make sure. Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second to...
Who seconded? Thank you.
Yeah. We have a motion and a second to not deny the vacate for a portion of David, or the 80-foot section of David Street. This will be a roll call vote.
Rankin?
Aye.
Hall?
Aye.
Young abstains. Meany?
Aye.
Buckles?
Aye.
Tackett?
Nay.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Next, we have a plat, a request by Deer Creek Development LLC for the preliminary and final plat of Greenbelt Center, plat number 6. Staff?
This is for the preliminary and final plat of Greenbelt Center, plat number 6. The applicant's proposing to plat 1.74 acres into one lot, zone BP Business Park District, which would then be sold with the parcel to the north at 3211 Titan Trail. This is a little bit to do with the church requests that were on earlier. They're proposing that plat, which that land would then get sold with 3211 Titan Trail, where they would establish that church facility. This additional 1.74 acres would be used for that church parking lot. The plat does show a 15-foot utility easement along Titan Trail, as well as a 15-foot water main easement along the rear of the property along US Highway 63. The water main easement would appear to be the same width as the easement located on the lots to the north. The plat does not show the extension of Titan Trail, as the lot would be accessed from the parcel to the north, which already has access to Titan Trail. There will need to be a discussion with the developer as to who will be responsible for that extension of Titan Trail to the south when additional lots are platted in the future. Staff is recommending approval of the plat as it is in accordance with the intent of the subdivision ordinance and can be served by existing utilities, and it's in accordance with the comprehensive plan of future land use map for this area. Any questions for staff?
Notation, I will be abstaining on this vote.
Just for the sake of time, if there's no objection, can I make a motion to move along? I move that we approve the recommendation of the staff for the request and the final plat of Greenbelt Center plat. That's on the right one. With all conditions to be met per city zoning, et cetera.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the request for preliminary and final plat of Greenbelt Center, plat number 6, with staff's conditions. What conditions are noted, by the way?
I don't think there is any, but I'm just covering my bases.
In case you think of one.
Is there conditions?
No.
With no conditions, then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Next, we have a request by Echo Ridge Condos LC for the preliminary and final plat of Silas Klingeman Edition, located at the southwest corner of West 4th Street and Ranchero Road.
This is Volker with staff. The request would create one lot on 1.757 acres for residential development, replatting an existing lot at the same size and dimension. The site is zoned R3RP Planned Residential District and has been since June 7th, 1993. The plat shows a 30-foot building line along the north and east sides of the lot. The plat shows existing sanitary and sewer lines and water running into the center of the lot from the center of Ranchero Road to serve the lot. There is a sanitary sewer line and a storm sewer line in the center of Ranchero Road. A water main is shown within the right-of-way north of Ranchero Road. A water main line and storm sewer line are shown through the center of West 4th Street. The preliminary plat shows a one lot with 1.757 acres on a corner of Ranchero Road and West 4th. The area was previously platted as a part of Echo Ridge Edition and is currently known as Lot 2, Echo Ridge, that was originally platted in April of 2002, consisting of 2 lots in tracts A through D. Staff would note that the information received from the applicant does not meet all requirements for the submission of a plat, but the applicant would appear to be platting a single lot away from the original plat to solely change the name of the subdivision. The lots appear to match existing requirements for the lots according to the subdivision ordinance, and additional details were provided when the area was originally platted, and essentially nothing is changing other than the name of the plat. Therefore, staff recommends that the request for the preliminary and final plat of the Silas Klingeman Edition be approved for the following reasons. The plat is in accordance with the subdivision ordinance with the minor exceptions that do not appear to negatively affect the intent of the subdivision ordinance. The plat is in accordance with the comprehensive plan and future land use map, which classify this area as mixed residential, and the plat would appear to only change the name of the subdivision of the lot. Any questions?
The applicant is here, and she woke back up a little bit ago.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Chris Klingeman, representing the Klingeman family, business address 4550 West 4th Street, Waterloo. The Klingeman family has sold Echo Ridge Townhomes development. This parcel of land is not part of the sale, therefore our basis for a request for the name change and separation.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
I move to approve the preliminary and final plat of Silas Klingeman addition.
Second?
We have a motion to approve the Echo Ridge Condos LLC for the preliminary and final plat of Silas Klingeman edition. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
We apologize for that.
Next, we have an encroachment agreement. We have a request by Gene Yagla for an encroachment agreement to allow for an existing 144 square foot shed to encroach into the platted 8-foot utility easement located along the rear of the property, located at 1143 Rachel Street. Staff.
Okay, this is a property that the applicant, Mr. Gene Yadler, purchased recently for a rental property during, I don't know that he actually did a full survey, but he found a stake, and it appeared that the shed was in the 8-foot easement overhead. There's an overhead electric in this easement that Mid-America has. He came to the office to ask what to do, and so we told him he needs to come before you people to get permission to get an encroachment agreement to leave the shed in that 8-foot utility. Therefore, our staff recommends that the request for the encroachment agreement to allow for the legalization of the 12-by-12 storage shed be approved for the following reasons. The request would not appear to have a negative impact on the area. Mid-American Energy has agreed to allow the shed to stay within the easement as long as the owner agrees to sign paperwork stating that the shed may have to be removed at the owner's expense if access to the overhead electric lines cannot be accessed due to its proximity in the easement, and is subject to a signed and executed encroachment agreement that enables Mid-American Energy to terminate the agreement and right to remove the shed in the event access to the area is needed for maintenance or repair of the overhead electric. Are there any questions for staff?
Any questions for staff? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Please don't. I would move to approve the encroachment agreement with the subject to...
Subject to a signed encroachment agreement.
Yes.
I would second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the encroachment agreement, subject to a signed and executed encroachment agreement. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. F2 has been pulled, or tabled or pulled, or?
Table.
Tabled. Hold on to item 6, discussion items. Request by the City of Waterloo for an amendment to the City of Waterloo zoning ordinance to require all new residential structures to have hard surface driveways in either attached or detached garage units.
This is Eric Schrader with staff, and it goes a little bit beyond that in what we're proposing for amendments, and we were just looking to get some general discussion. Given the lateness of the hour, we certainly don't have to go into a lot of discussion at this point, and you can, if anyone has any comments, you can just submit them to me, and we would look to have a more formalized ordinance put together, hopefully by next month.
So this will come back and we can look at it again next month?
Yep.
So what's the action item here?
There is no action item. It was just planned for discussion anyway, to try and get a little bit of input to help craft the ordinance, but, I mean, if anyone has any input, you can just direct them to me.
I mean, in the Reader's Digest version is we're basically looking at for all new construction to require that all new homes have hard surface driveways and garages.
And a garage.
So it's limited to new construction?
New construction.
No grandfather.
Yeah, existing would be grandfathering. It could affect, like, if there was in the an existing property that had a gravel driveway and they were looking to expand it, it could potentially affect a situation like that, but it would not affect anyone from, like, with an existing gravel driveway having to pave that existing gravel driveway.
Is it mostly just like erosion or like drippage from vehicles, or, I mean, why they came up with this? Or?
Also aesthetics, and then also kind of functionality for the homeowner, giving a place for kids to ride their bike, for example.
Today's environment, you know, you need to have a garage
Right.
for all the stuff people have, if even just their cars. So we really trying to look at improving the housing stock in Waterloo.
Makes sense.
Thank you. With nothing to move on there, let's move to item 7, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion carries. Our roll call vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
See how I first just at that. We need to make a motion. That's a good move first, take out delivery.
I gotta get out of here.